Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll get underway. So, welcome everyone to the Scrutiny Committee meeting for Children and Families here on the 12th of December in Yeovil, I'm pleased to say, and thank you for the officers and everyone that's made our welcome able to feel welcome here and help set things up. So, it's only the committee members present in the room that can take part in any decisions of the meeting. Others in attendance are here to provide advice. Just as an aside for those that are joining this for the first time, this committee meeting, the scrutiny meeting committee is one of the only, or is the only one that is able to have co-opted members. We have a number of co-opted members who are here to represent education for us. So when we talk about voting, that they will only be able to vote formally if the decision is in relation to education items. The way that I do try to run the meeting is that and anyone who's taken the time to join us today is trying to, and that are members of council or this committee, I try to give them the opportunity to speak because it's good to hear as many perspectives as possible. The agenda is on the website in advance of the meeting with some other additional slides and information put extra on the website. What I will ask is if people can remember to make reference to the page they're talking about. If they're asking a question, it makes it a little bit easier for us all to find it and able to follow the questions. Today's meeting is being run in the hybrid format with committee members and key officers to be present in Yeovil, other elected members and officers can join remotely if asked to speak. The council is making an audio recording of this meeting to assist in our discussions. This means that this meeting is being broadcast, and therefore other members of the public and partners can observe remotely. It then says that I'm to highlight the fact that the chat function should only be used primarily to indicate if you wish to speak. Again, raising your hand, etc., is also helpful. Speak only at the chair's invitation. Please say your name before speaking, and please remember to turn your microphones and cameras off when not speaking. Facility in Teams under the in this button for live captions should you want them. Here in this first. So we move on. Onto one of our agendas. Apologies for the please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Clayton and from Councillor Ellis, for whom Councillor Coles is substituted. We also have Councillor Hunt from the committee online, Chair.
Thank you. Any other apologies that I'm not aware of? Vice Chair.
I have apologies from Councillor James now, who has work commitments.
Okay, there being no more. We move on to the next item 2 of our agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any prejudicial declarations that members of the committee need to make that aren't already declared? Let's indicate. Please.
Thank you, Chair.
That's it, Tom.
Okay, cool. Just to say that the previous declaration of interest around mediation with council is now resolved, so that can come on.
Thank you. Councillor Coles.
Lee, I'm not sure whether that's a sub. I need to reiterate my.
That's the prejudice in today's agenda. No, that's fine. Thank you. Okay.
Whether I would say that I'm co-chair of governors of one federation of schools and I'm an associate member of another, and we are in discussions about various children with sent to various schools.
Okay, so just for clarity, is before we have to go around and declare all governorships, is your governor status declared on relation to interest?
I believe it to be so.
That's fine. And if it's otherwise, we're all starting to do governors, and it might take a little bit of time.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Any other declarations of interest? Well, we've talked about governors of school. It's a very rewarding thing, and I would advise all council members and officers to seek out a school local to them to become governor. It is the most rewarding position to have, being able to affect other people's lives in the way that they do. Now get the advert in there, Francis, for you. Never miss a chance for the advert.
Endorse the advert.
Thank you. Item 3 of our agenda is minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of November. They've been circulated. Any points of accuracy? I'll be happy that I sign. Thank you. So moved. So I do. Moving on then, item 4 of our agenda is public question time. I'm not aware of any members of the public in the room, but thank you to everyone online. Moving on then, item 5 of our agenda is the committee work programme. Members, any comments or issues in relation to that? You'll see that the agendas are being worked out. I'm just going through some of the stuff from our outstanding items, that we need to track. Those of you that are observing will see that we have a meeting in January where there are some issues. Anything else that we would, Vice Chair?
Sorry, I'm just a little bit concerned with our current financial position of things that might be cut. And I think we're going to have to look seriously at what the implications are for our young children coming forward. I'd like to see a little bit more in-depth discussions around, what affects us, what we can do going forward, and have a solid plan, a robust plan that we can make sure that they're not missing out, basically.
Thank you. I think it's a really valid point. Obviously, the council has declared a financial crisis, and we're going forward. And one of the things that I think is really valid as a committee, there are a number of changes that are being made that we may not necessarily be aware of in the current situation to hopefully find a way forward. And we may want to start finding a way to look at how we can be aware of what's going on. Because obviously the purpose of this committee is to try and make sure that the service provides the best of the young people. Cassidy, I see you looking at, do you want to?
I would quite like to, yes, if that's all right, please. Thank you very much, Evie, for your question or your observation. What I would say is that, as you'll be aware, almost all of the functions that Children, Families and Education undertake are statutory. Now, that doesn't mean that there haven't been savings. There have been significant savings that have been identified, but most of that is by doing things in a more effective, more efficient way, rather than cutting, per se. So there have been a number of moves to be brought forward. For example, if anybody wants to, in the team, wishes to spend £10 more, £10 or more, then it has to be signed off by a manager. So there's very close scrutiny of every decision that's being made. Nonetheless, I'd invite Scrutiny to call the team in to speak about the financial situation in your next meeting, if that's helpful. But I mean, there are some things that we do which are stopping the services being used or being called on more fully by doing early help, as you will be aware. And there's a very clear programme of things that we can do in the community connect subset. One of those it fulfills that function of stopping young people needing to call on the council services. But I think it would be really helpful if maybe in the next meeting, Chair, if you wanted to ask for that sort of look. I know that we've got quite a lot going on your agenda, but there's nothing more critical at the moment in looking at finances. Thank you.
Thank you for the response. I think it's more about the chair, the vice chair, and myself want to be able to be satisfied that the service we provide our young people isn't going to change, or if it is going to change, that we're aware of that. I think the important bit is doing things in a more robust way. And also, I've been here for a few years, and I've seen the number of changes that have gone on, supposedly that would not impact our young people. There's an argument that that's questionable. But I don't think there's need for us to enter into debate now. I think the point is that at our next meeting, between now and the next meeting, the vice chair and myself needs to meet with officers and yourself to try and figure out how we can this committee can best monitor the situation and make sure that we're comfortable with how it's going and we're as transparent as possible, which I know the service would want as well.
I welcome that, and if I may, I'll ask Heather Shearer as well as the associate lead member to come in on that. And if I may also, I'll invite Jo Randall Green, who has specific responsibility of education, if she might also be part of that. We welcome it.
I'm sure the vice chair and myself would be willing to have conversations about anyone to be involved in the conversation.
It's good. Thank you.
Rather than everybody, like, because we could potentially turn into a meeting of 30 or 40 people to be totally undermined. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're still on the work program. Any thoughts or comments, members? Okay, moving on then. Item 6 of our agenda is the Children's Services Budget Monitoring. As you members will be aware, we discussed this last meeting and we were keen to try and find some ways to understand things and drill down a little bit further. So I believe that we have a number of people speaking through this presentation. Just for clarity, the presentations have been circulated. Hopefully it'll be more accurate, and I'm sure members have all taken the time to look at and read the presentation so that we're aware where we are. So who's presenting it first? Who wants to speak? Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. Just a few introductions. There's been a few changes within the team recently because of the Tier 4 restructure, which we've just gone through. So Sean is moving over to interim national governance role. I've recently been appointed as head of business partnering. So I covered everything outside of children's, so adults, communities, private placement, central service, and so on. And now children's comes into the remit as well, so it's quite a wide range, as you can imagine. And then we have Siobhan, who is the finance service manager for children and families and children's community. So she will stay as she is. And helping Siobhan is online. We've got Stuart Flint. He's coming in to do some specialist work on children looked after, excellent placements, some more modelling around costs. And then we have Joe Curry, I'm the service manager for education, partnership, skills and inclusion. That's quite a long title.
Chris, could you make the microphone a little bit towards?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. One of the problems we're having is that with the constant colleagues online finding that there's always a pick up in there.
Okay, yeah. So that's a bit the direction. So yeah, we have Joe Curry, finance service manager for inclusion, and so we are bringing in some additional resources in that area. So Stephen Bell will be coming in January with plenty of local government experience in that area, looking at delivering best value deficit management plan, high needs working groups. So there's a few changes in the teams that we want to inform members of. So that'll be the changes from January. I'll pass over to Sean to carry on.
Thank you. So the committee's asked for this budget monitoring report to cover 2 areas for key focus and to dive a little bit deeper into those 2 areas. The key areas of pressure continue to be around external placements and transport under the general fund. So we're going to go into those 2 areas, and also in relation to dedicated schools grant, a bit more detail around BSG, and we're going to dive a little bit into the high needs areas of spend. So as always, this report is in 2 sections. First of all, the general fund section. These pie charts, hopefully you'll be familiar with. The gross expenditure for children, families and education from the general fund is 212.1 million, with 89 million pounds worth of income from partner contributions and grants, and which results in a net budget of 123.1 million. And you can see how the gross and the net change in the pie charts in terms of areas of spend. Firstly, in gross spend, equally around children's social care and inclusion, but once you take into account contributions and grant income, the bulk of the general fund net budget is on children's social care. So this is the month 6 position. Apologies, the figures are really small, but squeezing the table in one page where we're at. So the general fund, 123.1 million net budget. You can see that at the bottom of the first column. You're familiar with this table, but we're starting to see it populated in a lot more detail now. We're starting to see the variances around across all of those lines as we start to complete those forecasts with our new system. But you can see the top level in children and families, the overspend still continues to be around external placements with some offsetting underspends on fostering and permanence. So we're looking at children looked after really on those two lines, and Siobhan's going to go into a bit more detail on CLA. And then further down there's a section called inclusion, and again you can see that around SEND transport, that's an area of pressure of 1.7 million. But overall, taking into account all those overs and underspends, the month 6 position was a £12.4 million forecast variance by the end of the financial year. We did say we'd give the latest position update. We're still finalising the report for month 7, but the position is worsening, mainly around external placements and the achievement of some savings. But the report is being finalised, and that's as much of an update as I can give at this stage. Anybody have any questions before I hand over to Siobhan to talk to us about CLA? And then Stuart's going to Stuart's just going to come in and talk about some of the work we've been doing around the deeper forecast.
Any questions then on this particular element? So we'll go for Francis. No? Heather. I'll bring you in if you want to.
Thank you so much. Can you hear that okay? Is that all right? It's just, thanks so much for the figures, and I have seen them before. It's a question I wanted to ask. When we say it's a worsening situation, say placements across the year, based on the figures to date, do we actually factor in the fact that some of those placements may be short-lived, so you might have a spike in a month? So the figures, when we see them projecting forward, that's taking into account maybe one placement might have been 3 months or 1 month. We're getting towards the end of the year now, but that's already factored in. I just wanted to check. I won't steal Siobhan and Stuart's thunder, but ultimately the forecast takes account of known start and end dates of placements, and there is some unknown, some ambiguity about a child and how long they might be in a particular placement, or there might be some plans for a child to move a step down into a different placement, or their needs escalate, and ultimately each month we're playing around with those starts and end dates and where those children end up in what type of placement and where we might expect them to be in a month or two's time. But obviously each month that changes, and we update it on a monthly basis.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to hand over to Siobhan now to talk about.
Councillor Caswell. Sorry.
Just to give me an idea, how many children are we talking about in external placement?
Can we wait until a couple of slides down? You're still
And also, if we can try to recall last year when we were talking about, when we did our task and finish group, it's important that we try not to say that it's the number of children, it's actually placements, because the problem comes when we start talking about those, it's not the child's fault or issue, it's the placement issue, which is one of the things that we need to remember, and when we do it, because it's not the child's fault. John, thank you.
Thank you. I'll hand over to Siobhan.
Thank you. So this next slide just details the CLA budget position.
Sorry, got a bit of a wobble on with you. Right.
No.
Is it volume on your laptop? Turn off things.
No, it's the mic by the sound of it rather than yourself. You did not that one up in your hand.
Okay, so this next slide just details the CLA net budget position. Obviously, it's a very significant area of spend. So the CLA budgets are broken down by external placements, which is 38.4 million, which are placements provided by external organisations. We've got fostering and permanence budget 13.3 million, children looked after 4.7, which is mainly around support packages at home and transport for children looked after, and then we've got the leaving care budget of 2.2 million.
Sorry, there is a delay.
So this just details these key cost drivers around external placements in terms of the main areas of spend and overspend. You'll see from the first graph, you'll be familiar with these graphs on here. But the first graph details the CLA numbers since January 22, and we were aware of the spike in summer 22, and this had leveled off. However, we have now seen a recent increase in CLA numbers, mainly around sibling groups due to non-accidental injury. This obviously has an impact on external placement numbers and can impact on the high cost placements. So the second graph, it shows the CLA placement numbers. The increase around these numbers has mainly been around the US residential placement, around the complexity of need and lack of sufficiency in fostering, and bespoke 16+ supported accommodation. And we're also seeing a reduction in fostering, in particular around our internal fostering. So the average weekly cost is on the other graph on this slide, which we are actually seeing a reduction in the average weekly cost for unregistered placements of 9% reduction since this time last year. However, we are seeing an increase in average weekly cost for residential placements, which on average is a 13% increase from last year. So although we're seeing a reduction in the average weekly cost for unregistered placements, you see from the top graph there, that pie chart, we budgeted for 3 unregistered placements for the financial year. And at this point of the year, so at the end of September, 6 months into the year, we have already used the whole of that budget for unregistered placements. I'll now hand you over to Stuart, who I think is going to do the next few slides.
Good morning, everybody. So just to drill into the external placements budget, as Sian pointed out earlier on, that's the one of the main areas of overspend in children's social care. So the figure right in the bottom right-hand corner is the £10.4 million forecast overspend for external placements. This table gives us a breakdown by placement category. And the primary placement type that are causing us the overspends, as you can see from the table, is the top line, which is for residential placements. Those are external residential placements. And then the 5th line down is for unregistered placements. So those are the core placement categories that are causing us the biggest problem, if you like, in terms of the overspend in children's social care. So the next slide will take a detailed look at these 2 areas and show that the issue really is the number of young people who are in these placement categories. So the slide in the top right-hand corner, the blue line is the actual number of young people who are in external residential placements over going back to May 2022. So that's about an 18-month period. So you can see that the line is on an upward trajectory, more so in this current calendar year. That's when we've seen a bit of a steeper incline in that trajectory. And we can compare those numbers. So at the end of September, we were at 90 young people in external residential placements. And that's above our budgeted figure of 77 for the current financial year. So that 77 budgeted figure assumes that on average, we would have 77 young people in placements over the financial year. As at the month 6 outturn forecast, we're forecasting that the average figure will actually be 88, which is the grey dotted line that you can see on the graph there. So projections are that we will be significantly over budget in terms of number of young people in these placements. So that's the main driver behind why we are seeing this overspend on external residential placements. And a similar story for the unregistered placements. You can see again the blue line is the actual number of young people in those unregistered placements. And if we compare that to the orange dotted line, which shows that we had a forecasted number of placements for 23-24 of 3. And as at the end of September, the projected outturn was that we'd have an average number of placements for the year of 7. So very similar story for residential placements, in that the number of placements is higher than what we budgeted for. So again, that's what's driving this overspend on these external placement areas. Moving on to the next slide, which looks at fostering and permanence budget. It's a different story in fostering and permanence, and this is an area where we are underspending. So in the primary area there where we're underspending is on the fostering fees and allowances. We know we've got an issue within in-house foster care in that the capacity that exists for in-house foster carers is been reducing over the last 12 to 24 months. But clearly, initiatives are in place to address that, and going forward, the expectation is that we will increase in-house foster carer capacity so we can get young people into in-house foster care placements, which are a win-win in the respect that they have better outcomes for the young people going into in-house foster care compared to external placements, external residential placements. And they're also financially a win because in-house foster care is a much cheaper option for the council than external residential placements. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
I'm not seeing any at the moment.
Okay.
Members, opportunity. Has the management come in?
I think the next slide moves on to school transport. Sorry.
That's right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So I hadn't pressed my button, so I don't know. However, Peter, can I just ask you something? Which I probably should know, but I have forgotten. How many young people did we have in? How many in placements in the previous year? So I just want to look at our budgeting, because if we're budgeting for 3 unregistered placements at month 6 in this year, where were we last year? And the same with residential placements. We clearly decided we were going to have 77, and that would be a reasonable budget. How many did we have last year?
Yeah, so I suppose on the residential placements, you can see from the blue line, which is the actuals from last year. So it's so I guess you could, so the average number of placements last year was in the low 70s. So I guess at the point that the budget was set, the figure of 77 was probably quite a reasonable figure for the 23-24 financial year. But as we've proceeded into 23-24, clearly the problem has come about that we've got more young people going into these residential placements than we'd foreseen at the time of setting the budget. It's a different story in the unregistered placements. Sorry.
I'm not being clear in my questioning. What was the, I have asked probably the wrong question. I'm asking about what the budget was actually. Sorry. So what will we budgeting for last year in both of those 2 areas? We weren't budgeting for 77 last year, were we? Or 3, were we?
I'm not sure. I don't know whether Sian or Siobhan can maybe. I don't have those numbers to hand as to what we budgeted for last year. Sian, Siobhan, are you aware?
Yeah, sorry. We're more familiar with the details from last year. Siobhan's just actually bringing it up, but we wouldn't have budgeted for 77 last year. We would have budgeted. So each time we do the medium-term financial plan around October, November, December time, like we are now, we're trying to forecast how many young people might be in certain types of placements and what strategies the services are put in place and how that will impact on the numbers. And so when we set the budget for 22-23 in last financial year, it would have been based on a set of assumptions that we were making in October, November, December in 2021. I got my financial years right. We can find the number and we can come back to that. Siobhan can, if we can hand over to Jo and let her do the other stuff, we can come back and find the numbers, if that's all right. We didn't have that to hand.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine.
But that's the process that we undertake. And so we don't just each year just add inflation to a budget.
Sure. Sorry, just to members. So I know we use, as we travel around the county, we're using lots of different microphones. These particular ones are very sensitive to being talked to. Because the problem is, if you don't talk to, you notice how that's changed when I move my head away, because you need to be literally speaking into the microphone, otherwise people won't be able to hear. Sorry, I know it's a bit. Sometimes you say if you have to move the microphone, it will be easier rather than your head, but if you turn your head away, you lose the sound. Sorry, I just need
Chair, I recognise that those figures have been prepared. Thank you very much indeed. Stuart, I'm sorry for accusing you of having the information to answer the question. I've directed it to the wrong person. Forgive me. Thank you.
Okay, Ruth, did you want to come in and ask a question in relation to this bit? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, mine is around unregistered placements. You may not be able to answer this, but we had conversations about reducing this, and obviously we can see that it is reduced slightly, but we were aiming for 3. So I wondered what has caused us not to hit that target and why we sort of got stuck at 7, really, because we had quite a long discussion about concerns about unregistered placements.
I believe, oh, sorry, that's a bit too loud. I believe Jane Shelburne Barrow's online, and she's probably the best person to answer or respond to that question.
Hi, sorry, yeah, Jane Shelburne Barrow here. Sorry, it's quite difficult to hear. I think we're being asked about the reduction in unregistered placements, which we currently we have 2, and we will only have 1 from January. So my response to that is we have significantly reduced through our planned programme of moving these children into Homes and Horizons, and continue to do that till we want to get to the point of not having any children in unregistered placements.
I think just for clarity, we're looking at month 6 numbers, aren't we? Or month 5 numbers. So obviously we're ahead of the game. So the numbers that we're looking at, Jane, are obviously
Yes.
lower
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
That's the important point to make.
So I think at that point we were partway through the programme of opening our own homes through Homes and Horizons, and as those beds became available, we were able to move children in, but clearly could not move them until a registered placement or a bed in Homes and Horizons became available. And due to the complexity of the children, the majority of the children in unregistered have moved into our Homes and Horizons as those beds became available.
Thank you. Ruth knows that that's answered that question. Any more questions on this bit before we move on? Okay, can continue, please.
Right, is that good? My name is Jo Curry. I'm the Finance Service Manager for Education, Inclusion and Schools. I've got a few slides just talking through some of the local authority funded areas, and then moving on to the dedicated schools grant. So the first slide just takes you through the net budgets for home to school transport, and that's split into 2 areas. So we have the mainstream home to school transport budget, and that's £12.9 billion. That's a fairly stable budget in terms of number of children, but the spend is impacted by increased inflation, particularly over the last couple of years, as you probably realise. And then the other budget is for send transport, so that's £10.1 million. That one is much less predictable and much more impacted by increased demand in send, as well as inflation pressures. So the next slide just gives you 2 separate grants showing you the impact of inflation and demand on both send and mainstream transport. So send pupil numbers have pretty much doubled over the last 6 years, from 2018 to 2023, from approximately just over 600 to just over 1,200 in the graph. And you can see that there's some lines on that graph that show you how the costs have changed over that period in terms of cost per passenger and total costs overall. So you see they've grown significantly. And then on the right hand side, there's a similar graph showing the mainstream pupil numbers. So they've remained fairly static, just over 8,000, and costs have gone up as well, but not quite as significantly as the percent possible. So the next slide just takes you through our monitoring and forecasting process for transport. So as you'd expect, we do the budget monitoring on a monthly basis for transport, and they're held through finance and the service. Our forecasting at the moment is quite basic. We have some basic data around number of children and EHCP growth and inflation. We struggle to get into the real detail on transport because although the data is held in capita, it's quite a difficult system and it's not reconciled with our finance system dynamics. And we've just recently started a project with the service to work on some more sophisticated modelling, and we're looking at extracting some more data from Capita and a dashboard to go along with that, to hopefully give us some more robust forecasts going forward. That's,
Before you move on.
that's it on transport, yeah.
If you jump back a little bit, just a couple of points for clarity. Again, we're assuming that everyone understands the process, so capital what?
So Capita is a system that is used to record children and where they travel to and the routes, and it has finance information as well as numbers of children.
Okay, the other one then, we talk about home to school transport,
Yeah.
and we talk about two difference. So what's statutory? What is the council required to do?
Yes, that's quite a complex question with reams and reams of technical guidance. I'll try, I think,
I'm happy for a more simplistic, but in depth. It's more of a matter of, hypothetically then, if I'm in my head, we are required to provide transport for young people. We are required to provide transport for young people who live more than X miles away from home. Those sorts of things that I'm talking about, because I know there are a number of members in the room that may not fully understand what the difference between the two are.
Yep, I can answer that one. That's working. So the council has a statutory duty to provide.
Well, if you pause for a second, you've got a wobbly one, so we should. Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Does that one work? That's better. Okay. The council has got a statutory duty to provide transport to a child's nearest appropriate school if they are if they live over statutory walking distance, and statutory walking distance is 2 miles for a child who is aged 8 or younger and 3 miles for a child who is over that age, or there is no safe route.
Thank you, that's great, but what we need to be able to, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this was so that we could, so that as members of the committee, we could start understanding some of the intricacies, and that was one of the ones, what do you want to come back?
Yeah, I've just heard Francis pick up on the point that I missed, which is it is nearest or catchment school that we need to provide transport to.
Again, for some reason that and I'm going to get really worried, Rob. Is it you that's making them do?
Is it me? Nearest or catchment school.
So what Rob's saying is the nearest or catchment school, which is which is there. So members, does that help? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. A moment ago, the phrase was closest catchment school or suitable school. And we're talking about SEN pupils. So the suitable school may very well not be the catchment school. And also the other criteria was with no safe route, no safe walking route. If it was in a different to the 3 mile or 2.4 mile, whatever it was, safe walking route. So I'm now confused. It's not difficult, but I'm now confused.
Thank you. I'll bring Rob back in, but just so what I will ask is for home to school transport in a couple of paragraphs as a note for information that we can circulate, purely because I know it does get complicated, and I'm happy for as simplistic as possible, but it's important that we as a committee understand this, purely because as has been, I've had a number of people say to me that your home to school transport is excellent. What is it going up? What are you not doing? In what I want to be able to say is going to at least pay for it, because this is the statutory guidance that the law required to do, because the other stuff that are outside of our control, our partners, the contract putting the costs up and stuff like that. So it's important that we try and at least have a clear, or as clear as possible understanding. Rob, did you want to come back on something?
Yes, so it is the nearest appropriate or catchment school for the child. So appropriate means appropriate for the age of the child. So clearly, we wouldn't be transporting secondary age children to a primary school. Or appropriate is in a school that is to meet their needs. In terms of what you said, Lee, Chair, about being able to explain it in simple terms, I think that graph that Joe shared, those two graphs that Joe shared on the previous slide are really helpful in terms of there are two things going on. In mainstream home to school transport, the key issue is inflation. The passenger has gone up. The number of passengers has remained relatively constant over the last 5 years. In send, the issue is volume. That the cost per passenger has not increased as much, but the key driver has been the increased number of children, and those journeys are typically more expensive because they are about transporting individual children or small numbers of children rather than mainstream, which is literally busloads of children.
Thank you. That was where I was going next. So thank you for preempting the question. That is a really important point here. I've got two people in the room that indicate three people. So what I'll do is start with Chris.
So the slide before the one that we're currently on, sorry, I'm not sure what number because they're not numbered. It makes a point there about demand will be about connected to where places are available. So has the delay in some of the special schools being built and the number of schools that are not responding positively to consultations impacted on the transport budget?
Yes.
Joe.
Just a quick question about the mainstream. How affected is Somerset as a rural county in terms of those safe routes? So obviously 2 miles, 3 miles walking, but how badly is it impacted if the 2 miles is down a country lane and you have no choice, we have no choice but to transport in? I don't know the answer, so I don't know how big a problem that is, if at all.
I don't know how I'd answer that, how effective in terms, I can't put a number on how big the issue is. It is something that we look at periodically to see who are the children who are being transported, who are under statutory transport distance, and are there measures that we can take to make sure that there can be to make those routes safe. And that will be a kind of cost benefit analysis in terms of clearly putting in infrastructure that makes a route safe. May be value for money, may not be value for money, but yeah, I don't know exact numbers of children who were transporting who are under statutory distance on those roads.
Okay, I wasn't looking for numbers, just a sense of how much it affects. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking as a local councillor with a number of schools in my area, I can promise you that most of the parents draw our attention to the fact that there are safe and not walking distances. But what I will say is that I'm just conscious now. We're looking. I wanted to just try and keep it the bigger picture because before we start drilling down, because immediately someone put their hand up and say, "I've got school 100 meters away from me." So let's not go into the personal. The important point I want to make in this, and I think we're getting there now, is that we understand what the statutory bits are and the information that comes to it, because that's an important factor in what we are. Heather, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I've been aware of the difference. Luckily, I've seen this sort of information. Well, I'm aware of the difference about the different factors affecting the mainstream and the SEND transport. I'm just curious as to why the SEND transport has not been as affected by inflation as the mainstream one, because I would have thought the inflation factor would have been there on both potentially. But I'm just wondering if there's a reason for that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know.
I mean, I think the starting price for those journeys is very much higher to start with. I think it's probably safe to say that there is more competition in the market because these are taxi providers often for individual journeys, whereas one of the things when it comes to the mainstream is that there's less competition because there may be one supplier who has operated that route, and when you come to renegotiate that route, there aren't other suppliers in the market who are waiting there sitting with empty buses and are able to do it. So one of the pieces of what we're doing is looking at how we do contract some of those routes to see whether we can improve competition.
Thank you. Francis.
Just a very quick one, and perhaps one that's, thank you. A quick one, and perhaps one that will want an answer outside the meeting. It's to understand how much we work with schools, particularly over SEND transport, because it's a difficult area, small numbers and so on. And in rural counties, its providers are not necessarily growing on trees. And whether that is something which can both support the child, the school, and the budget. Just an understanding of how that works would be really helpful.
I think it's certainly something we look into, and how we can explore that. We're doing a piece of work which is about identifying where our most expensive destinations are, so that we can look at whether those settings that we're spending lots of money transporting children to, whether we might be able to work with the settings to find more cost-effective solutions. But it's going to be what we can't do is we can't delegate all our transport responsibilities to schools, but we may have some schools and settings who are willing to be part of the solution.
And also just just one point from me, just to be clear, but we'll move on in this, because I think we've got lots of clarity there, but also the options available are very much different as well between mainstream and your SEND transport. And I know the team have been working very hard on drilling down, offering personal budgets. It's sometimes just an opportunity for the council to fund parental transport or other options for that. So I know that there's lots of work being done on that. I'm going to move on then to, I think it's DSG next, isn't it?
Yeah. So the next few slides just talk through the ESG and the budget monitoring for that. Hi, hello. Hello. Actually. I think so. I was definitely down at the present. Looks okay. Let's swap it.
Try another one.
Slightly reversed. Hello. A little bit like a sound check or something. Right, okay. I'll carry on, shall I? So I think, Sean said there a detailed fact you want to just, I'll turn mine on.
Yeah, before the meeting, the Devon Valley Services team circulated a set of slides that were done for the DSG member briefing. There's a lot more detail in those slide packs. We are focusing on this session on purely high needs, really, but there's a lot more out in there in that pack.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So I don't propose to just talk through these 4 DSG blocks. Probably all seen them all before and know you actually know what they're all for. The next slide is, however, worth talking through. So that hopefully when it comes up shows you the 23-24 budget monitoring position as of month 6. And as you can see, the total funding available for services 23-24 and 112.1 million, and our forecast at month 6 is 127.6 million for the outturn for the full year, which leads us to a forecast adverse or deficit of 15.5 million for the full year, and that translates to a closing forecast deficit at 31st March 2024 of 37.5 million. And I think we said originally that we provided, Sean has confirmed that we can't give exact information as yet, but it has worsened and expected to have worsened slightly. We'll see the main pressure on The DSG is within the high needs block. Next slide. The next slide just goes into some of the details on the statutory override. And the statutory override allows councils to basically not have the DSG deficit on their balance sheets. And that expires as of 31st of March 2026 at the moment. And at that point, what I've described as unmitigated deficit is projected to grow to nearly 100 million. And obviously that is a pretty big, significant number. And if we were to have to recognise that in our statutory accounts, then that would likely result in our council having to issue a section 114 notice at that point. So we've been asked by the DfE to refresh our deficit management plan, and work on that has started, and our current proposal is to present that to the Scrutiny Committee in February.
Question to this overspend that's going on. What does it look like? How much is the deficit now? Who owns that deficit? And obviously going forward, the legislation will require that it will come back into us. I know the answer, but I'm trying to get it so that we can explain. So where is it sitting at the moment? The deficit?
It's not on our balance sheet. So yeah, it doesn't officially sit anywhere in terms of accounting. It's not accounted for on our balance sheet, and it's projected to be 37.5 million.
So the education budget is separate, and it sits within that, yes?
So the education budget, you mean the schools budget, that's what comes out of the schools block, which is the top of those. So the big pressure area is within the high needs block, which is funding for largely SEND children.
The technical term, because it is accounted for, is a crystallised reserve. So the DfE and DLUC agreed that local government could crystallise the DSG reserve, and we hold it in a crystallised reserve. It reserved in our accounts. It's very separate to the rest of our reserves.
Yeah, thank you. And just for, I've been here for a while, and the schools, the education, the schools budget is always managed separate. It's only recently that it started coming back up, coming into our horizon because of where we're heading for all of this. And I'm just conscious that the big issue will come as it's been indicated in 2026, but it's important that we start seeing this stuff now to be aware of it. That's why I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that we had a little less. So it's not another problem that we have to worry about just yet, although it's there for us to do. We need to be aware now. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I might be being naive, but maybe a silly question, but who's funding that overspend at the moment? Where does that go? It's all of us saying this. Does the government fund it, or what happens?
All of the deficit for the whole country are sitting with DfE at the moment.
Nice. I see Councillor Leisure for hand up. Liz, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. This is of particular interest to me, and it is to councillors and lead members all over the country. At a recent conference, I heard a council leader say that although it's held as a statutory override, the money is being spent and has been spent, and that particular council is already having to borrow in order to fund the money it's spent. So although it appears to not be counting, not be of particular concern, it is. And as these figures grow all across the country, more and more councils will end up in that position. They won't be able to deal with it as a kind of internal borrowing, and it will become a greater and greater pressure. I would suggest this is one of the things that upper tier councils are most concerned about at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Liz. That was some of the reason why I just wanted to spend a moment now just to highlight it. And I hate having to say it's a problem for further down the road because we've got bigger problems at the moment. But it is a problem that we need to be, as a committee, particularly Children and Families Scrutiny Committee, aware of. And as a council, it needs to be more of a point made. Do you want to carry on? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next slide of the statutory override, a little bit out of date, this information. It just shows you what the deficit is per pupil by all the various up-tier authorities across the country. So I was sort of sitting in the middle of that group at that point. But it's very tiny, yeah. Let's move on. So this slide just gives you a bit more information about the high needs block itself. And so the current budget on that is £73.5 million, and it is used mainly to fund special schools, pupil referral units, and independent non-maintained schools cost placements there. And we also provide additional money for SEND support for mainstream schools and post-16 colleges and early year settings. And then some of the money is also used to fund council teams support SEND. The next slide just really goes into a bit more detail of why we've got such a problem with the high needs block at the moment. And there are various causes of the deficit. And I'm not going to talk through these. I think probably Rob is probably better placed than me to actually talk through the detail on these. But it is fundamentally as a result of increased demand in the system and numbers of children coming through, particularly with education, increase in education, health and care plans that the teams support. Just gives you a flavour of the high needs block spend, and the majority, or over 60% of that spend, is on independent non-maintained schools and special school placements, and that is forecast to be overspent as of month 6 by 4.7 million. And that was based on our budget. So our original budget position that we set was actually we built in 5.5 million projected overspend, so we've already gone over that 5.5 million as of month 6. There was a transfer that we had hoped to make in the growth fund. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that due to other pressures on the growth fund, so we had to we're not going to make that 1.5 million transfer. And then there's a further 3.4 million overspend in supporting SEN and mainstream schools, academies, and we make a contribution to children looked after their education provision. The reasons. The last couple of slides just give you a bit of a flavour of some of the trajectories that we're on. So this is a slide showing you the number of EHCP, or education, health and care plans, over the last 5 years, and you can see that we're still on an upward trajectory. In that sort of grey area shows you the confidence levels, but certainly the graph, I think annual increases are slowing down a little bit, but we're still on an upward graph in that sense. And the very last slide, this is just a slide showing you the number of independent non-maintained school placements that we have within Somerset, so you can see how much that's increased. And in sort of Christmas 2020, we were at about 200 placements, and now we're up to 400, just over 400. That's a doubling in 3 years. Time placed to those children. That's the last slide.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry for the interruption as we went through that, but it was important that we covered the points, I think. And I hope that the committee have got a fair amount from this presentation, because it's important that the understanding levels has gone up. Tessa, did you want to come in? Other members, if you want to indicate, please.
Yes, thank you. Can I just go back to slide 50 or page 56 at the bottom? Can I check the wording? I think it should say Somerset is slightly above the national level at 4.6. Is that am I correct?
No, it's not.
It's now. Okay, I'll just take the word out. Okay, fine, that's fine. Now it's lovely.
Thank you for that clarification, Bruce.
So obviously this is concerning, so pleased. My question is that obviously we've seen in the first half of this financial year an increase in deficit and high needs block. However, we also know that the government are doing significant work with developing better value and safety belt programs to try nationally to get it down. It appears our developing better value hasn't had the impact that perhaps we would have liked. Is that because it's delayed, I suppose, is my question. Are we going to see an impact from that piece of work as we move forward?
The Delivering Better Value for SEND programme is a DFE-led programme that Somerset entered in, we started the work in autumn 2022. And that involved doing a lot of this analysis to understand more about our demand trajectories and then modelling up some identifying areas where we could do work to mitigate that demand and then modelling up what the impact of that is, which is where the figures that Joe has shared about the future deficit have come from. The proposal we put together was agreed in April of this year, and the modelling from Newton Europe, who were the organisation who supported with us, was always based on an assumption that we wouldn't start to see impact until 2024, until September 2024. So, or the financial year 24-25. So, I think it's too early to say that a difference hasn't been made by that programme work.
Okay. So okay, I'm just trying to, there's a report somewhere, is it the Newton Europe work that's going on, or is there about to be a report, or is it being?
So the Newton Europe report that was done through the Delivering Better Value work was shared with us in around February of this year, and we've shared information from that report with this committee and through the schools forum around it. So there's no further report coming from Newton around that, although Newton are doing work with adult services, supporting big transformation piece of work there.
Thank you. So what I'll do, I'll ask Fiona to we'll look at the report previously, make reference to that, so that people can go back over that. Do you want to come back?
I was just going to ask Joe if it was something that we might want to add to our forward plan to have an update on work and progress that's been made.
Yeah, without going back and checking, I agree with what you're saying. Yes, we'll make sure if it's not already there, we will add it to it. I just,
sorry, Chair. So on one of Joe's slides, about 3 previously, it said that we are in the process of refreshing our deficit management plan. There we are, brushed on that page. The council is refreshing its DSG deficit management plan, and we're liaising with the Department of Education for that. And the proposal is that we would add to Scrutiny Committee in February. So that would be an opportunity to.
That answers that question. Thank you. And could I won't necessarily request an answer, but it would be interesting in understanding how the schools forum are helping us with that. I know we have reps on this, but I mean, I won't put Jerry into the position now, but it would be perhaps at that point helpful for us as a committee to understand how the schools forum are helping us with that, purely because it is a partnership, shouldn't it? I would suggest, and that would just, so perhaps if what we'll do outside the meeting will liaise to make sure, but I think that would be helpful. And I'm seeing nods for those that aren't licensed, so we'll take that as a yes. That's fine, unless you want to. It would be helpful for the committee to understand how the schools forum are helping us with that. I think so. That's that. Any further questions about this? Any online? No. Okay. Thank you. I will say, the last meeting when I came up with this wonderful idea of having a bit more detail, it was to make a number of reports so the committee would have. So I wanted to thank you all for your presentation today. I would would hope that the members got as much out of it as I did. And hopefully going forward, whether that's understanding of some of the bits that are there that we just inducted. Just thank you for your presentation this morning. Okay, we're moving on then. Oh, Francis.
I'm sorry, just for a very, very brief second. I wonder if, knowing that we must not personalise things, that it's not our school or our child or whatever, I just wonder when it comes back in February, some anonymised case studies might help us. Bring child into the room.
Absolutely, it's important to bring the child into the room. We'll make a note of that suggestion, and I'll make an officer self-refer to that, Francis. So yeah, absolutely, it's important that we bring the child into the room. Okay, item 7 of our agenda. Then moving on, we have a long-awaited update. Yes, it's been on our list for a while. The HCP press an update. I'm looking to Rob leading on that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You've got a double act of me and my colleague Clever James, who is our head of SEND. And what we're going to be providing an update on is a general update on SEND and then a more specific focus on education healthcare plans. There's obviously links with the kind of discussion we've been having so far in terms of this is being a key area of interest from a financial perspective, but it's also a key area of interest in terms of children and young people's lives and the experiences for them and their families. So just to explain a little bit about where we are now, almost exactly 12 months ago, we had just finished a Ofsted and Care Quality Commission area revisit inspection. The revisit followed our 2020 inspection, and what Ofsted and the CQC were doing was coming to see whether we had made sufficient progress in areas of weakness that they previously identified. Their judgment 12 months ago was that we had made sufficient progress in addressing 7 out of the 9 areas of significant weakness, but there were 2 areas of significant weakness where they said we had not made sufficient progress. And just to be clear, when I use the word we, that is not we, the council, that is we, the local area partnership. That's local area partnership that includes the council, health commissioners and providers, and schools and education settings. What they noted in that inspection was some significant improvements, so commitment to working together, improvements in the timeliness and quality of EHC plans, improved pathways for supporting children with autism, and development of some new enhanced provision in some of our mainstream schools. But they said that there were key areas where we have more work to do, and specifically these related to there being some children who, when they have an education healthcare plan, so that's a document that sets out what the child needs and what they're entitled to, that too often there are children who have that plan but are not getting the provision that is set out in the plan. The rate of exclusion in schools from schools in Somerset for children with SEND continue to be too high, and also too many children are missing out because there were high rates of suspensions and long-term part-time timetables, so children with SEND couldn't be in school as much at the time as they should. So following on from that, we developed what's called an accelerated progress plan, which set out the steps that we would be taking to address those areas of weakness. This was submitted to the DFE in March, and we had a bit of doing and throwing, but it was finally signed off in May 2023. And we provide monthly progress reports to the Area SEND Partnership Board, and we have 6-month reviews with the Department for Education and NHS England. And the next one of those is happening early in January. That slide provides details of all the different actions and our kind of summary in terms of how we rank rate them to say whether those actions have been completed, whether they're on track to be completed in time, whether there have been detail that sits in underneath it, but kind of diagramming the cogs seems to, is intended to show what key focus is. Sorry. Is that, okay, yeah, so the diagram of cogs is intended to show the key focus of this work. It's about making sure that we are identifying children who need the support, making sure that there are better inclusive practice in our schools, and then making sure that there's the right provision available for children who need it. So we have a slide which kind of summarises some of the key things that have happened over the last year or so since our inspection. So in terms of identifying children who need support, we've put in place an advice line for timely support for schools. We have from September joint planning meetings with educational psychologists and advisory teachers are meeting with every school to identify which children are going to need the support. We've set up a process called the area inclusion discussions that ensure that where we've got children who need additional help, we're able to discuss those with the schools in a timely way. So that started this term, we've discussed over 200 children through that forum, and a useful statistic, or encouraging statistic, is through those discussions, there were 90 children identified as being at risk of exclusion. Of those 90, 84 are still successfully in their schools. So yes, there have been 6 of those excluded, but we are seeing that those are helping to keep children in schools. Around inclusive practice, we've developed using something called Sunset Inclusion Tool, which allows schools to kind of benchmark their support for different areas of special educational needs. And so we've got 217 schools signed up so far to using that. And we are seeing more schools referring to and making use of the graduating response tool, which is a document that we pulled together with schools to set out what kind of support and provision should be ordinarily available. And then when it comes to the right provision, we're using our annual review process to check where schools have got difficulties in delivering provision. We've now got 9 enhanced learning provisions in secondary schools and 1 special school satellite, so that we've got a more inclusive offer in our mainstream schools. And we've also got more children accessing specialist support for social engagement now at Sky Academy, and we'll have a new free school over in September 24. And on the side of that slide, there are some quotes from schools about the Sunset Inclusion Tool and the Graduated Response Tool, about how they've used that, how it's helped them to identify areas of strength and development, and they've used that to then support their inclusive practice in the schools. I'm going to hand over to Claire, who's just going to start talking a bit about education and healthcare plans.
Good morning, everybody. So we've got a fairly detailed report in relation to education, health and care assessments and plans. I thought it would be useful just to outline some key headlines, really. So I think when I've been to Scrutiny before, every time I come, I report an increase in the numbers of education, health and care plans. And I'm not going to disappoint anyone this year by saying that there's again an increase in the number of education, health and care plans maintained for children across Somerset. An increase from 4,970 to 5,445 as of the end of October. The numbers of requests for education, health and care needs assessment has increased, as it has year on year, from 1,060 to 1,128. And as has become a kind of more pressing issue within the statutory spend arena, is the number of annual reviews kind of subsequently held as a result of the number of education, health and care plans that are maintained by the council. So this year we received 3,931 annual reviews compared to 3,529 the previous year. I think what's really, really important for us to all bear in mind is for most annual reviews, as they're submitted reports, you don't expect to have to undertake any changes to a child's education, health and care plan. They should really take place at key
transition points. And the code of practice is clear that we shouldn't anticipate high numbers of amendments to EHC plans every year. And through looking at the data relating to this report, over 60% of those annual review reports that came in were requesting change to the education, health and care plan. And that's a really significant number. If you think about the amount of work that then means the team has to undertake. A fairly high number of those relate to schools feeling as though children in a change of placement, and that might be mid-key stage, not relating to a phased transfer where a child has to leave school, so at the end of year 6 or the end of year 11 or the other parts of the system. Really positive. I've been to Scrutiny before. I talked about tribunals, and there has been a really significant decrease in the number of tribunals registered in the last year, and that is largely down to efforts from the team to resolve matters earlier through mediation. I think part of that is agreeing places at our specialist settings, independent specialist settings earlier, which contributes partly to what we just talked about in terms of the lecture on the high needs budget, but it does have a subsequent impact on not seeing a tribunal through when you don't have a school who's able to meet a child's needs within our mainstream or maintain special sector. And just to touch it, really just build a little bit on what our finance colleagues were talking about earlier. We allocate funding for children based on their needs, and mainstream and special schools receive top-up through that banding process as a child undergoes an education, health and care assessment, and it's based on the needs of individual children. One of the things that have grown, and you'll have heard in our finance update about what is seen as an overspend, if you like, in our mainstream top-up, is around accessing additional funding via costed plans, and that is a way of us looking to allocate more funding to schools where they feel they cannot meet the needs of children. We're trying to prevent the risk of children moving into specialist and independent or maintained, but the costs still crop up, if you like, through the costed plans. I guess important to note that placement costs for independent or maintained schools are set by the schools. There's very little negotiation to be had, and they're around £37,000 more expensive than a maintained special school or resource base. And I'm sure you'll be aware that there's a funding consultation underway that's finished in autumn 23, and there are proposals being developed to allocate more high needs funding to schools without the need for any HD plan, and to make funding more equal between mainstream and special schools. And we thought that little table would be helpful really to see the disparity between the funding that's allocated to our different types of schools. And anecdotally, what is clear for someone who's agreed a lot of the different funding is that when a child who's at a particular band in a mainstream school has really high needs, often the amount of funding that we allocate to them is similar to that we would allocate to a special school through the equal funding. So that hopefully will come up through the funding consultation as we go forward.
Yes, so just to pick up on that, I think at last Scrutiny committee where there was an item about the consultation, I think there was a question about banding it. I wanted some clarity around that, so I think that table was really helpful. And the key thing to note is that if a child's needs are assessed as being band 5, they're assessed as being band 5, whether they are, regardless of what setting they are in. But you can see from that if a child is in a special school, then the special school will receive £16,000 of top-up funding for them, whereas if they're in a mainstream school, they will receive £5,807 for them. And so when Claire talks about the top-up, the costed plans, what we might be doing is having conversations with the mainstream school around if we were able to top up your top-up to place more support, could you provide the right environment and support for that child within a similar kind of financial envelope without necessarily needing for them to go into a specialist education setting. So the next slide, just before you move on, just so while we're on numbers then, you say about we top up,
You were a different we earlier, I think. So, you're specifically talking about the council's contribution.
I'm talking about the high needs block. So this is high needs block funding, which the we is coming from the crystallised. The crystallised accounts that
DSG, so it's not necessarily from the council's budget.
No.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, so next slide.
Just a similar bit of clarity.
Okay.
Similar, the high needs spend comes from the DSG, but I think the cost to us of assessment and review is a council cost, not a DSG cost, and I think it's worth knowing those two.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly right. The cost of assessment and reviewing plans, which also includes the cost of commissioning educational psychologists to undertake those assessments, comes from the council, as does the transport, where there is a transport implication. So, yes. So this next slide, I think, is useful in terms of, I guess, understanding a bit about describing a bit about what's going on and why we're seeing this increased pressure around the budget. Is if you look at the overall pupil numbers in Somerset, which is the green line, and based on the axis on the right, there's been a 2.6% increase in our total pupil numbers in Somerset. So more or less flat. Over that period of time, you'll see kind of 2.5-fold increase in the number of education and healthcare plans. That's the kind of turquoise bar, and this is just the number of children in schools, so it doesn't include post-16 and preschool children. And over that same period of time, we've seen a 78% increase in the number of people in specialist settings. So people have heard, I think, us talk quite a lot about work that's being done to improve our specialist efficiency. The council's invested around £50 million over a 3 or 4 year period, built new special schools, expanded special schools. We've got free schools coming along. All of that work is happening and has had an impact, but that's happening in a context where there is a growing movement of children from mainstream schools into specialist schools. So just thought I was involved.
Just for clarification, just to help members. So the previous system that was used to try and identify children with additional needs, when was change made from statement the HCP, please?
September 2014.
So obviously, the reason I say that was because it took a while to understand the difference of the transition, and obviously this graph is really helpful to show the difference, the number of young people with that are in need of additional support. So thank you.
I'm going to hand back to Claire, who's going to talk a bit about any reviews.
Okay, so hopefully you've seen a bit more detail in the report we submitted, but one of the things that we wanted to highlight to you today is we've had an LGSEO investigation which was looking at annual review performance in the local authority. And one of the things that's a good one, local government and social care ombudsman. So they have undertaken an investigation in the local authority owing to a number of complaints about the timeliness of annual reviews. So you'll be familiar, I think most people are fairly familiar with who live and breathe the education health and care plan process around timeliness of new assessments. And annual reviews is a bit of the correlation, if you like, of an assessment process. Therefore, there are statutory duties in terms of annual review processing that the local authority should be meeting. There is no national data set available around annual reviews, there's no benchmarking, and there's very little idea of nationally how this looks and feels, apart from anecdotally talking to colleagues across the country who are finding themselves in difficulties around annual reviews. So in terms of these graphs, the important bits are, and I'm not going to keep this simple because I don't think any of you can get your heads around it. I'm going to keep it simple because it's really complicated and hard to explain. But in terms of an annual review, we request our settings hold annual reviews, meetings. They have to have the report to the local authority within 2 weeks. That enables the local authority to process the annual review report, which sometimes can be hundreds of pages, understand what it needs to do to that, and then make a decision about what it's going to do next. And that might be keep the plan as it is, amend the plan, cease the plan. If the school setting submits that beyond 4 weeks, which some do, quite a few do, you've already lost your statutory deadline so far. The 2 weeks and 2 weeks is already tight. If you then decide you're going to amend an EHC plan, you have to do that within 8 weeks after the 4 weeks. So you can already tell these times that they're hard to monitor, and we're probably, compared to our colleagues in other local authorities, we're quite far ahead in terms of monitoring, not in terms of delivering necessarily, but in terms of monitoring how we meet these timescales. We've got a bit more sophisticated than many other colleagues. So one of the things that we're committing to over the coming year is to really start monitoring and tracking the performance around annual review timeliness in the same way we do around statutory assessments. And then we can start creeping up performance and set some reasonable and realistic targets in terms of what our expectations are. We are awaiting, in August 2022, the DfE launched a consultation around annual reviews, which we are yet to have an outcome around, but they're also very concerned about the timeliness of annual reviews and recognise that some of these timescales are having a negative impact on local authorities, particularly as a result of a judicial review that took place in Devon and as a result of the LGSCO investigations. So I'll just put one more slide here. So that just gives you a bit more detail about the investigation. They look very sympathetic with the local authority in terms of the pressure and demand, but recognising that these statutory duties exist and we should be following them. So the activities that we're going to be undertaking to support improvements is one of the things we absolutely have to do is make sure that when annual review reports are submitted to the council requesting the changes to take place, that they come with advice and information that has already been gathered prior to the risk of those requests being made. And we'll be holding a really firm line on not amending education, health and care plans that do not get returned to the council without that information in place. As Rob described earlier, we've put in place annual planning meetings for every single school. We have an inclusion advice line. We have targeted support towards children through our area inclusion discussions. So there's little reason now for a school not to reach out and ask for help from the council. And they should do that before they hold annual reviews requesting for changes to plans. And we'll be really holding a really tight line on that. We will be clarifying the expectations of schools around that to make sure they understand what those expectations are, and that we have got additional staff in place to process annual reviews reports in a timely way. So I don't really want to say very much more about annual reviews unless people have got questions. Yes, all questions about anything, just on to the last slide.
As I say, I'm just conscious that you've got one more slide, so there you go. Thank you. Okay, members, I've got a number of members indicate questions. So Simon was first in, so Simon, keep your hands up and I'll just make a note of it.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, a couple of questions on one of the tables, table 3. The EHC assessments refused. What intrigued me there was there's been a rise in the requests for EHC assessments, which was expected. But there's also been a rise in the a much higher rise, 37% rise in the number that have been refused. What happens when a parent tries to appeal that? And secondly, you also stated that you give more money to the schools when an assessment is done by X pounds per hour, and I wonder whether that actually covered the cost, because some of these children will be quite high needs and will require one-to-one, and I'm not at all sure that an additional £4 to £6 is actually sufficient for the school to be able to provide that.
Okay, so a couple of things in there. Yes, we've seen an increase in the number of cases where we've had a request to assess and we've not agreed to undertake that assessment. That is because we are trying to hold a clearer line on what schools should be putting in place before they request an assessment. I think it's probably worth mentioning that the majority of assessments, requests for assessments come from schools, not from parents. That was, and so that's where that's coming from. The numbers you've quoted in terms of the amounts, the per hour costs relate to children in early years education, whereas the other amounts are in thousands of pounds for schools per year. It's worth saying that the evidence isn't that having full-time one-to-one support is particularly good for children, young people with special educational needs and disabilities. It doesn't help them to develop their independence. What they need is access to inclusive teaching with targeted support where necessary. However, the costed plan mechanism is what we use where it's clear that a child has got an assessed need and the funding that the school would receive isn't sufficient to meet that assessed need. Okay, thank you. Sorry, there was a question about appeals. So where we do refuse to assess, families can appeal our decision. Some of them do, and in some cases there may be further information presented that shows that we should have undertaken an assessment or that an assessment is necessary. So we will make that decision. In some cases that won't be the case. But what we do try to do in those cases is engage our advisory teaching teams so that they can work with the schools and the families to identify how best to support the child or the young person. Because I think one of the things we really want to be clear about is that an education care plan shouldn't be seen as a golden ticket for a child. It's at best a 20-week process, so it doesn't put in place support in a really timely way. All schools have a legal duty to use their best endeavours to put in place support for all children with SEND, and all schools have a notional SEND budget which they can use to fund that support. In Somerset, there's about £40 million combined notional SEND budgets in schools. So it's not a case that a child needs an education healthcare plan for the school to be able to fund any kind of additional support, but they may need one for anything over and above that.
Thank you, Secretary Chair. Firstly, I apologise because I asked the wrong question through ignorance. I made an assumption that table 3 showed me how many of the assessments were not agreed to, rather than the assessment itself. So I'm intrigued now to know how many of the EHC assessments you carry out result in a plan or don't result in a plan. I'm sorry if I've missed that, but I'm new to this committee, and if I've missed it in another page, then I apologise.
It's absolutely not the wrong question, because there are both of those things can happen. We can either make a decision not to undertake an assessment, or we can undertake an assessment and then make a decision not to issue a plan.
So on table 4, you'll see the number of plans that we agreed to issue.
Okay. Sorry, where can I find that? My apologies.
In the doc, I think you've got the paper open in front of you, just below the table of the EHC assessments refused. In table 4 is the number of EHC plans issued. So then the number of, after we've undertaken an EHC assessment, in table 4 are the number of the plans that we agree become education, health and care plans. What isn't in the report is the number we refuse to issue. It's a very small number. I'm very happy to provide that if that's helpful to you.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you for your assistance on this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'd like to ask a number of things. The first one is, it would be good if we could all have a link to the Ombudsman's report or whatever is available. I couldn't find it on the Ombudsman's website, whatever reason. So a link to that would be helpful for all of us. Another thing, just an observation is the increasing need on slide 7 is hugely greater than the increase in the number of, in proportion to the number of places in specialist provision. That's not to say that I don't recognise the great increase that there is there and why it's so expensive, but part of the thing is about the whole level of need, which has gone up dramatically out of proportion with the number of children in our schools. And absolutely, I understand the work that's going on with schools, the things that have been put in place, all of which is hugely helpful. And I absolutely understand the pressures of rising numbers on all the teams. However, I have a sense of victim blaming here. Yes, of course, schools need to do better. Yes, of course, reports need to be on time and proper. However, the report received in 2 weeks on slide 8 has gone up, dramatically improved in the last year. The LA response 4 weeks has dramatically reduced. And I would like us to understand rather more, and that probably isn't.
Microphone's gone off. Are we heading for a question?
Yes, two questions. One, I would like to know more, and I hope the committee would like to know more about the difficulties of the teams in coping with the level of work and in what is being done to address that and how successful it is being. Remembering that it is a child in the room, not the difficulties of the service that we should be concerned with. And the other one is how many children for whom provision in schools has been discussed, is put in place in schools, and is now wildly different from the EHCP that is in place, and the EHCP is still not being done with currently.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
How many?
Yeah, but I'm not sure what we're looking for here, because I think I'll interpret your second question. What EHCPs are in place aren't being acted to or implemented?
No. EHCPs which are out of date, where the provision has appropriately changed in verbal agreement with everybody, provision in place is in place, but endless problems because no update of an EHCP has been made. How many cases are there like that? Is the question I'd like to know an answer to. Obviously not today.
Okay, so I think what would be easier, in fact, is just that I can make sure that you get the information you want. If you email me your question, what I'll do, I'll make sure that goes to officers. But the reason I'm asking you to send it to me is it's an interesting response that needs to be recorded in our minutes. That's the point that I'm getting at. I think that, so yeah, so there isn't a response now to say for your question, but we'll get your right to me. I'll get the officers to respond, and then we'll make sure that they're in the minutes. Perfect, thank you. Bruce. Go for it. Sorry, I was just going to say, you can just do my blind spot, just as it's a way to have it in the area anyway.
Just in response, in terms of the Ombudsman finding, it hasn't been published yet, but we are happy to send a copy to members of the committee. And I think it is worth noting in terms of performance, what all of these graphs mean is that the volume of work is increasing, and the volume of work is increasing massively as Francis mentioned, that the costs of doing that work are costs that sit with the council. Last year, the council agreed to around £500,000 increase in funding for the statutory SEND team, and what we've seen, and so more staff. As those staff have come in, what we've seen in the last couple of months is I think it was an 80% increase in the number of EHC plans that we've been able to issue those months compared to previous months. So we are seeing that additional investment has led to more work being done, and that's going to enable us to focus on getting those reviews finalised, but we can provide the specific details when we see the grant.
I think it's also, thank you. I'm not sure, so in respect to the statistics and the ombudsman, I think we'll find in the chat, I posted a link direct there, so that information is there. But there was also, I suppose, this is my personal perspective on what it is and where we are. When the system was changed to the Education, Health and Care Plan, the idea was that the requirements for the young person was able to be shared amongst the statutory partners who should have responsibility for it, because previously that may not have been happening. As the transitional statements to EHCPs were put in place, there was at some point some pushback onto, and as time has gone by, schools and parents have become a lot smarter in making sure that the information that's required for the EHCP to be assessed is in place, and consequently the reverse is happening when it comes to challenging the legislation. So the councils had to keep up, and was only recently that we're at a position where we have the staff in place to be able to do that, and that's one of the points that I think Bob just made. Is only now that we're at a point where we're able to deal with the volume and the complexity of them in a better way, and that's hopefully going to mean that going forward the stats get a little bit better. I think no one's shouting at me today, I'm wrong on that one.
So I've got a few questions. I'm going to do one at a time to make it easier for you. So you may not be able to answer this one today. You need to go away and get the data. But how many of the reviews that you talk about, because you said that 60% are requesting roughly for a change of placement, how many of those are early reviews that are being called?
Just to clarify, it was 60% requesting amendments to plans.
Yeah. Okay.
Where some of those, more than we would like, are requesting a change of placement. We don't hold the data from the annual reviews, but we can gather that. I can't give it to you today. I'm sure it's something we can find out.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that actually. Obviously, increase of plans equals more annual reviews. So you said that you've got more staff, but are we going to have capacity to be able to cope with that?
We're going to have capacity based on what we've currently got, but in terms of the continued increase of EHC plans in the future, what we've got now won't be enough for what we might need in 2 years' time if we continue to see the growth. I think for me, there's a really key link here between this and the education funding consultation that was talked about at last scrutiny and that's just been closed, because that was about how can we put arrangements in place so that there can be more SEN funding in schools, where schools don't need to get an EHC plan for a child, for the child to access the support that works for children, because it means that they can access the support better, but it also stops the creation of the bureaucratic process around those children, which frankly, once started, it is incredibly difficult to end education and healthcare plans. And so what we need to make sure is that we are putting in place arrangements where children get the support they need. Families can feel confident that their children will receive the right support without having an education and healthcare plan.
Okay, thank you. So the other thing that would be really helpful in future reports, if possible, is we've seen this morning that there is significant links to council pressure for transport and potentially funding, particularly in 2026. So understanding how many of those consultations to schools around placements are being positive and how many are being negatively accepted, that'd be helpful data moving forward. And then the next one is, we talked a lot about data, numbers, but at the end of the day, they are young people and families that are going through this. So how are we ensuring that it's a positive experience for them?
I think many of our families have cause to complain about the situations they're facing. We also have many families who are going about their lives, working hard to look after their children with SEN and always have jobs, and we're not looking for anyone's kind of gratitude around any of that. There are some families for whom their experience is poor, and there are some families for whom their experience is good. I'm happy to outcome meeting approach, which we introduced 18 months ago, which entails where someone is having an educational health and care assessment, bringing together families, schools, the educational psychologist and the officer writing the EHC plan, is a really positive piece that we will continue to absolutely commit to. Even when capacity is under significant pressure, that way of working feels fundamental culturally to keep going. So that leads to less dispute and to everybody sitting around the table and agreeing what a child might need in order to be successful in school and thrive. So I think that collaborative outcome meetings are a really good example of where we're leaning in and working with to make sure that their voice is heard and is seen as relevant and very important for the next steps.
Thank you. And then my last question is really glad to hear. So we've seen historically quite a turnover of staff within the team. So how can you just reassure us as a scrutiny committee that the team are being supported? Because obviously this level of workload is huge, and that puts a huge pressure on Claire and the rest of her team.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have seen turnover, and it's an area where you can get into a vicious cycle in terms of, as people leave, it becomes more stretched. As it becomes more stretched, then more people leave, and so on and so forth. Which is why getting staff in, having that additional investment has been really key. But what we've also done is, and whilst you said it's a question for me, Claire and her managers have been really working to support the teams, whether that be through weekly check-ins, through regular team meetings, through a supervision process. When we did focus work every year around getting a strengths-based practice within that area, we've also worked with our HR team to do some engagement with officers within that team to look at what some of the issues and challenges are within the role. So, yeah, big area of focus.
Thank you, Reece, for your questions. Toby.
Following on from Ruth a little bit, obviously we are aware the situation is getting worse, and we are aware that of things being put in place to try and stem that tide. But do we know why the EHCP requests are continuing to go up, and why we need to? I'm understanding the move from statements in 2014 to EHCP, but it's going up and up and up and up and up.
There's no single reason. There's a variety of things. One is that the change from statements in 2014, the new legal framework set a looser test, and so I think it became, one of the very challenging statistics is that nationally when families go appeal a decision at the SEND tribunal, 96% of those appeals are upheld in favour of the families, and local authorities only found in favour in 4%, which you can interpret in various different ways, but clearly the law is on the side of that increasing number. There are also issues around funding. So I've mentioned about notional SEND funding. So the funding guidance is that schools should fund the first £6,000 of support for a child through their notional SEND budget. That number, £6,000, was set in 2013 and has remained the same ever since. So inflation means that more children get into that system. But not only that, when a child has an education healthcare plan, our expectation is that the schools fund the first £6,000, and then our funding is on top of that. So the more children you have with an EHC plan, the more £6,000 are taken out of your notional SEN budget. So you get this kind of perverse thing that the more children in a mainstream school, the more children with an EHC plan they have, it actually reduces their available SEND funding for other children. So it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle there. I think anecdotally, you'd also hear things like changes to the curriculum and inspection regimes over the last 10 years have had an influence. And we've undoubtedly seen an impact following the pandemic, but these graphs go pre-pandemic, but we've certainly seen an impact following the pandemic of children who really struggled to get into school. So, yeah, no simple answer, but a variety of complex.
Thank you. An interest, where are we nationally? I mean, this is a national problem, and are we in line national?
It's a national problem. The SEND system nationally is broken. It does not work, and I think I'd say that, it's not working for all of the stakeholders. In that's not just the kind of local authority having a moan about it. I think schools would say that it's not working properly for them. Families would say it's not working properly for them, and ultimately it's not achieving great outcomes for children. In terms of where we are nationally, Joe earlier shared that graph of the different local authorities' deficits, and we are roughly in the middle of the pack for that. I mentioned that we were part of the Delivering Better Value for SEND programme. So the DFE has got 2 intervention programmes or support programmes for local authorities with deficits. There are 34 local authorities nationally with what's called the Safety Valve programme. Those are the biggest deficits, and then there's another 55 in the Delivering Better Value. That's the next tier down. We're in that next tier down. But that tells you that the DFE are supporting 89 local authorities to manage their deficit, which is 60% of all local authorities. In terms of EHCP statistics, our timeliness of EHCPs is better than the national average. That's been a significant area of improvement. There are no national public statistics around annual reviews, so it's not to make those comparisons. And our rate of children with EHCPs is just a little bit above the national average, not way down.
Okay, thank you. I hope that was helpful. I found it really interesting, and thank you, members, for the questions, because the whole reason for this coming to us in this one, it was to be able to help us understand better where we are. I'm just looking at the comments for this paper. It talks about F2.2, the committee recommended actions. Where are the actions in the paper? I can't see them. If I missed them, then shoot me.
In the paper, just managed to shut my laptop down as well, just a really sensible thing to have done just before I asked that question. In the paper, there's a section on annual reviews.
It's para 2, page 59.
And on the slide deck, on the slide just before the questions, they're the actions that we are keen for Scrutiny to avoid.
Okay, so have you got the paper in front of you? Which perhaps the recommendation, so the issues for consideration of the recommendation, 2.1 talks about receiving an update of the PHCP, and then 2.2 talks about agreeing recommendation action points. Background is 3. And just trying to find the points that we need to agree. That's all. Sorry.
No, please don't apologise. I've just got a horrible doom-filled computer screen, so I can't bring it up. So, thank you.
Okay. So if you look at the, I don't know whether is that Fiona? Yeah. So
Yes.
thank you. So on the screen, is that what you're looking at now?
Yes, please. Those are the actions that we want to be recommended and approved. And then I'm just scrolling through the report. Top of page 65, which starts annual planning meetings offered to every school across Somerset, and it's the bullets beneath that.
Sorry, I couldn't find it.
No, it's not your fault, it's my fault for why I put my laptop down.
So essentially, these are the actions that we are going to be undertaking in response to the issues that have been identified through the LGSCA's complaint to improve our performance around annual reviews. So having those annual meetings with every school so that we're able to identify and discuss any children where schools are saying that they need to make changes to their education healthcare plan, making sure that we're communicating clear expectations to schools about what advice and support that they should be doing in preparation for the annual review meeting, so that we're able to make informed decisions about whether to amend and what amendments to make, and then putting in place the additional staff in order to process annual review reports in a timely way.
Okay, thank you. But those 2 points are what we're being asked to agree. Now, what I will do, I'll help you out a little bit in this one. It's I've got the caveat after the 3rd recommendation, because you talk about additional, so we're in effect, the recommendation we're agreeing that you have additional staff in place to process the reviews in a timely way. There's no limit on that, is there?
So what we're saying is that in response to the issues identified around annual reviews, we have taken these steps. These are things that we have done, and we would like the committee to either say, okay, we are satisfied that the steps that you've taken are addressing or are appropriate to address the concern, or no, we feel that there are other things that you should be doing.
Yeah, so I'm just being, okay, members, I'm conscious that there's a number of hands that have gone up. I'm conscious, the recommendations, I personally am not quite clear about, so we need to be, and I want to be clear, and I hope that's what the hands are going out for, that we're supporting. So
to be clear, we are not asking the committee to endorse additional resources on top of that we already have. We've informed the committee that we have put in place additional resources, and we're asking for people to say whether they think that is
just we're going to get some kind of into further loss, but I mean, members, what points are we looking to make? Francis was first.
first of all, we are being asked to agree the recommended actions. And those recommended actions are then listed. I would like the committee to add to those, to the third one of the recommended actions, that it should, we know the additional staff in place, absolutely. We would like to be assured, and I'm not producing words here, that suitable training and service standards are in place.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, that one would hope that anyone who works for the council will have the suitable qualifications. So what I will try, yeah, and training. So, but what I will do, I'll acknowledge. I think it's important. I think to say that I would support the need at the end, at the start of bullet point 3, to put that this committee notes the additional staff in place. What that would do, that would clear up that. So I said that as far as the second part, I'm going to be pedantic. Our staff that work for the council, I would be suitably trained and qualified. And I'm not saying that, but it's not for us to micromanage, Francis. That's what we're looking to do. So let me take the other members first, and we'll come back. Bruce.
I'm nervous in number 1 around the word offered to every school. I know we can't force schools to take up planning meetings, but can we just have some reassurance that that'll be monitored?
Okay, I would hope that would be the case, and because Rob's going to come in. Yeah, so we had support for that point from behind. Over to you over here. Joe, were you next?
I'm sure, just checking, that there is a kind of more detailed plan around this, because looking at number 3, my question is, how many staff, how many more annual reviews and defined timely? Yeah, I imagine that it's that in an operational plan somewhere that if I really wanted to know, I could say, can I have a look, please?
Yes. Yeah.
That's loose. It's, you know, as I say, same as what Ruth has said, we offer it. How many that we write, that's just operational things that we can find out if we want to.
And I think, and I think that's something where we may want to think about whether, you know, this is clear, the annual reviews is clearly an area of focus for us, but it's an area that has attracted the Ombudsman's attention, and it's an area that's of concern for families. So I think we would be happy to kind of come back in 6 months' time and be able to provide an update about the impact of these things, so we can talk about what training people have had, talk about what the uptake has been of the planning meetings, the number of staff allocated, the number of reviews completed, and so on. Because part of it is, as Claire was saying, the issues around annual review timeliness are very, very complicated, and getting the right set of statistics to performance manage that is part of the task, because it's not an easy task.
Okay, with that. So where are we? Martin, I think next.
Thank you, Chair. How are we picking up those children who are not in mainstream schools in terms of plans? So I'm thinking of the special schools, independent schools, in fact, including those children who, for whatever reason, are not in school.
So we have the same expectations of our special schools, independent and maintained schools, to submit annual reviews as per any other school, and we monitor those. We remind schools where they haven't held annual reviews, and we chase up those that haven't received them. We do have children and young people who are not in school, so children who are electively home educated or have educated otherwise, that school packages of education, and the local authority has a role to undertake those annual reviews.
Okay, thank you. I think that was no enough there. So you have a look that Fiona's kind of been updating as we went. So have your points been covered?
Hang on, where have I? How do I know if I've got an up-to-date one and I can't read what's on there? Right, it's now up to date. Thank you. that is really, really helpful. But I just want to say one thing because there is no nationally recognised training, it's a really hard job. And the KPIs are really difficult. Absolutely recognise that. It makes it all the more important when our local arrangements really and KPIs really do support the improvement that's needed. And so I do know the additional staff, the impact update and number, yes, great. And what Rob said about KPIs and training coming back to would be really helpful.
So members, are we happy then, Bruce?
Sorry, Chair, I'm in real pain now. It's not obviously, I'm not in Teams because I'm hearing, and I can't read that because I've left my glasses in the car, so someone just read it, please. Being real pain.
I think, Fiona, if you want to do, I think if you zoom in the page. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. It's a bit bigger now. I don't know if that helps on the big screen. Members, that's perfect. Yes, thank you. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Just a small point. I'm going to not Martin asked. With children that are being homeschooled, you said the council has a role to undertake those reviews. Are those reviews being carried out?
I don't have the data with me today, but I can certainly provide some updated data to Scrutiny if that would be helpful.
And EHE's actually one of my favourite subjects. It is one of the topics I'm looking to bring back very soon, because there is an indication that we may not be fully aware of all of the young people that are being educated and the reasons behind that. But I'll come back to that, I promise. Okay, members, do we have some recommendations that have been updated in there? They're a little bit bigger on the screen behind me. Any issues or concerns? Someone kindly propose? Anyone? Health safety rights in Castle level. And my vice chair has agreed to second them. So I'll put it to the vote, and all members, as I said, education, all members of the committee are able to vote. All those in favour, please show. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Sorry, I had to be, it was the point of the meeting. We'll take a 10-minute break. So it's 4:15 now, so we'll restart at 25 past. Thank you. Obviously, this is something that connects on to something that I and other members have suggested that this committee would be interested in understanding the content of where it is. So I'll hand over to Richard. So thank you for coming along, Richard, and off you go, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're running a little bit late, so I'm going to introduce David into it quite early on, so that they can have their say because of all we need to go. But I'm Richard. I'm Service Director for Children's Commissioning, and we're running this programme called Connect Somerset. The aim behind the programme is really to try and increase the amount of early help that's in our communities. So working really closely with communities, working really closely with lots of different groups, lots of different providers and partners across the whole system, and with residents as well. So that's the kind of aim that we're trying to do overall, and I'll take you through the details of that in a minute. We're really pleased to be back. We have presented some things here before, so I'll try not to repeat the things we said before so much, and through the slides. I think what's important is that we hear from David and Ingrid in a minute, and I'll introduce them at the start so that you can hear kind of some of the things which are happening and actually happening, rather than me pontificating about all the plans and the strategies and things like that. Important thing to bear in mind, given the current context, is the point of this is to make a more efficient public sector delivery model. We do not, I think it's pretty apparent nationally now, we do not have enough money to do that health and care thing at the moment with the current design. So this is coming up with a new way of operating that's much more cost effective, much better for residents as well, and able to help us to meet the demands that are in the system. So that's kind of the context to it. So hopefully quite important and timely given where we are at the moment. So I'll introduce David and Ingrid. We'll talk a bit about kind of what's happening in schools And then I'll go into some of the detail that sits behind that as well afterwards. So Dave McCormack is the head of Scrutiny Academy and has been working really closely with us over the last year. And Ingrid Eddington is the Connect Somerset champion for the Chard area. And together they've been working really closely and they're able to talk a little bit about this. So Dave and Ingrid, if I take off slide sharing, you might be able to see you on screen.
Hi everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Hello, everyone.
Lovely. So yeah, as Richard said, my name is Dave McCormick. I'm the head teacher of Holyrood Academy over in Chard. So we are, for those colleagues who might not be aware of the detail around the school, we are an 11 to 18 school with approximately 1,400 students. We serve the town of Chard in South Somerset and the surrounding area, quite a large catchment area and a very varied catchment area in terms of both geographical area and also a mixture of kind of very affluent rural areas on the outside of the town and some areas of central Chard which experience very high levels of deprivation and disadvantage, both compared with the Somerset average and in terms of the national average. So just to quantify that a little bit for you, two of the wards of Chard, both Jocelyn Ward and Holyrood Ward, both fall into the bottom 10% nationally in terms of the IMD data. So indices of multiple deprivation. So just a little bit of context around the town. Despite that, Holyrood is a good school. We were inspected in February. We're really proud of our school and particularly proud of the fact that we work very closely with the local community. And that's kind of the first key point that I wanted to raise is that the work that Connect Somerset have done with us as a school to support us really ties in with the mindset shift that we've made around trying to intervene at the earliest possible stage to support our community. So key piece of work that Ingrid and I have done together is in kind of convening local community leaders. They come together once per half term at a breakfast that the school puts on. And what we've done is identified some service gaps within our local community around food poverty, public transport, and early years, universal early years provision and access to that early years provision from particularly families from disadvantaged areas. We now have an action plan that we've put together as a group, very much with the school and Ingrid taking a lead. And that action plan has led to us moving Chard Community Hub into a larger premises within the town and expanding their operations so that they can serve more people in the town. So that's just one kind of example that I wanted to share with you around how working in a different way with the support of Connect Somerset has really benefited the town of Chard thus far. And I think what I would say in terms of, if I might offer a piece of advice in terms of this model being successful in other areas, really feel like a key strand of our success has been the fact that we employ Ingrid, the school employs Ingrid. So we've been provided with the funding for Ingrid's role by Connect Somerset, but both contractually and in terms of working practices, Ingrid is an employee of the school with a clearly defined job description who receives training and input from Connect Somerset, but is crucially a member of the school staff, and therefore the aims of the two organisations are deliberately written down and very, very clear. So I think that that's been a real crucial win for us, really. Ingrid, so I'll hand over to you just to talk a bit about your early successes in your role.
Yes, absolutely agree with everything Dave's saying. Hello, I'm Ingrid. It's that really close between the school and Connect Somerset that makes my role really down and my work within the community. And I've been in the community for a long time, so I know the community, I know how the community functions, and this community of Chard is different and has its own unique as well. The town really important services locally to get the early help that we need in for our town. So I've been able to work with members of the community hub to do lots of grant bids and funding for projects that will actually link to support the town and the needs of the town. So things like developing a community garden to involve everybody and bringing organisations together in the town. We're linking up to develop services from the museum. We've been organising with disadvantaged families, get to know them, lots of early years in the town to support early help before they start school.
So Richard, I think that's what we had planned to feed back in the first instance, but we're very, very happy to take any questions that colleagues might have, or for you to nudge us to say more or less on any particular aspects of our work.
Yeah.
That's really helpful, Dave. Thank you very much, and great hearing from yourselves. I think that makes a big difference. Chair, can I suggest, because Dave and Ingrid will need to go before we finish the meeting, that if there are questions, we take a few now and then we'll proceed with the slides.
Okay, thank you. Ruth.
So just for pure clarity, I have a bit of an affection, obviously, for Holyrood because my son went there and my niece and my nephew currently go there. The working child, I have to say, from being in charge is excellent. It's been very good and very well received by the community. I'm just really keen to know about how it's going to be rolled out across Langford, Ilminster and the Crewkern areas, because obviously your patch covers all of that. That's a huge patch. And being a governor, I hear from the schools across the other areas that maybe it's not quite as good in those areas for them yet. I appreciate it's a working process, but be good to know the plans.
Yeah, absolutely, we'd agree with that. So focus of this term has been establishing the procedures and everything that's happening in the town of Chard, making sure we've sorted those out, and then we'll be able to be in a confident position to roll out the early help model to the other towns. But meanwhile, we've been connecting with baby groups, maternity groups, early years groups and health visitors in those towns already, and we've identified all the schools. And our education relationship manager is booking us in the first week of January to go into other schools in those 3 towns.
Thank you. I'm just conscious that our colleagues have joined us to talk about a general one. So before we start drilling down into why they got it in their area, we haven't got it in ours, so we can be careful on that one. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I've got just a couple of points. Thank you both for taking the time. What you're doing sounds really exciting. So in an attempt to try and make it go as far as you can, have you, Richard may want to come in this, thought about putting together a best case, an example of what you're doing, so that we can take that model and share it across the best practice examples and that, so we can share it further? I'm just conscious that we have a large number of LCNs, local community networks, which are operational, which are operating in across Somerset, and the work you're doing is quite intrinsic into the LCN. What the example you give in my head should be what LCNs are doing. So, are you writing that, Richard?
So yes, absolutely, and it's something Dave and I have discussed actually. That idea of kind of, can we create an ideal model and then share that across the county as well. So I think that's a really good idea. We are still in the process of creating that ideal model rather than being able to share it. But part of the so you'll see in a bit, there's a really big change program that we need to do around this, engaging about 20 to 30,000 people to go through that program. And so a big part of it is the comms, and what we're trying to do really is say there are a set of values and principles that we want people to be operating by in the future. But if I write a set of principles or a set of values down, then you should switch everybody off. So what we do instead is we will be sending out case studies, little examples that we cascade across the system that illustrate those values that we're trying to put in place. So certainly the case studies, the examples, and the work that's going on in Holyrood at the moment will be part of that. But we're looking really wide across the piece about all the good practice, all the good things which are going on that we can then amplify across the system.
Thank you. And I'm just conscious because none of the members are looking to ask any further questions, because I think they think I've shut them up. But Dave and Ingrid, thank you very much for your time and commitment today. We really do appreciate it. It was really interesting hearing from you both, and I hope everything goes well for you. Thank you. If you want to get away, then Heather, do you want to come in and I'll bring Richard in and continue the presentation?
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a it's a great thing that we're trying to do with this, and it's really lovely. It was interesting to hear Ingrid say how he was employed through the school with a very clear job description. I just wondered how typical that was, that the area champions would be going through the school. Is that something that would go into your best practice, if you like, if you're doing that, or is that just depends on the area that you work in as to how you're employed?
Yeah, so this is something we've been really interested in about, how does that employment model, affect, how we operate, what's the best place to be employing a champion in. We've been really clear from the start, we don't want champions to be public sector. So the arrangement is that they are individuals who are within their communities, that are well-known leaders within their communities, and we are paying that organisation that employs them a little bit extra in order that we can have some of their time to help lead the change programme across the public sector. So we have a range of different sort of employments. We've got an individual who's working, we've got two that are working for parish councils. I think that works really well, particularly linking with the one teams and the LCNs as well. We've obviously got school-based, and we've got community leaders, so a couple of people who are sort of chief execs of the community hub, who are also champions as well. So we think that works really well, that's the blend, but over time we'll see what works best, and how that should operate. So yeah, trying to learn the lessons and have different approaches in different areas so that we can try things out and do things differently, recognise the different strengths and gaps across the whole of the county in these different areas. Okay, great. Crack on. So I wanted to start off with a short note from JRF, so Joseph Roundtree Foundation and New Local. Can you see the slides okay? Yeah, good. Last 10 years I've put this type of stuff in place. It's really hard to articulate. So we managed to find this blog that was written fairly recently that I think sums it up quite nicely. So it's the second paragraph that I like. So it's not about the state getting out of the way. It's not big society, but it's about the work will only succeed where community power meets a like-minded local state. So this is about a symbiosis of how the public sector works and the voluntary community faith and social enterprise sectors. We're trying to get those two things to work really closely together and kind of work alongside each other. I think in the past we've been quite guilty of taking a public sector model and pushing it onto the voluntary community sector. Between us, if you look at large voluntary sector organisations, they almost mimic a public sector delivery vehicle, and that's not, that's great, it has its place. That's not what we're really focused on. We're focused on the 95% of voluntary community-based and social enterprise organisations that are not engaged by the public sector at the moment, because there's value there, and if we can find the right way of working, that's where we'll get the value out. So that's just an important point to start off with, and I thought that was a good way of articulating it. I did share this slide before, so I won't say anything much about it, other than you know better than I do about the huge challenges that residents are facing at the moment, children and families, older residents as well. And we are absolutely focused on that, about what we can put in place to help individuals through their lives and to succeed. Lots of context, loads of stuff that's been written. We've added a few things to this over the time that the slide pack's been put together. I'll point out a couple. We've got the work that we're doing around the integrated care system and the model there. We've obviously got the council plan and a blueprint for Connect Somerset, which is draft. You've got a copy, I think, in your packs. We're sharing that because we want to do some engagement and talk about the kind of technical stuff around how Connect Somerset works and get different views across the county. There are also some national bits of guidance as well. The fuller stock take is about integrated care system and primary care networks and how they're working with communities. Early help system guides, a big really redesign of early help, and we're using that and linking into that as well. So things like that we're trying to draw on and build on top of. I did share this slide before as well, so I will just say very quickly, this is kind of my ideal service model where you've got demand and you've got service and they're in balance with each other. But 13 years of austerity means that we've tried out something different. And what you can see here is on the right, the service is smaller, but then what happens is the number of behaviours in the system subconsciously. And I'm sharing this because that way that demand works across the whole public sector system is a really important concept that underpins what we're trying to do. So what you see is demand building up. So you might see long waiting times as a way of controlling demand coming in. You might see high thresholds, that brick wall there saying you're not dealing enough, come back to memorial. Actually, it's more expensive to treat people when they're more ill than it is at that point in time. You also might see a rationalisation of services. We've got services A, B, and C that have been designed really tightly. You've got need D, but you just have to choose one of A, B, or C, which doesn't really meet the needs. So we've got various behaviours that we get in the system subconsciously that build up because services are under pressure, and that's what we see as a result of austerity. Two things with this really. One is that this is a statutory minimum model. So if you keep going, eventually the service breaks. It gets overwhelmed and it breaks. And we see that across the country in various places now. And then the second thing is it feels really unkind to be in that demand box. That's not really what we want for our residents. So there's something about how do we change this? It's really simple. In a nutshell, what we've got to do is just help more people and help them earlier. The trouble is, it's really difficult to implement, but that's what we're planning to do. So the idea is that we help more people and we help them earlier. And we create a more efficient public sector model because of that. But we've got some tricks to pull on as we go through. Again, you see this is the really big system that we've got. So this is the early health system. We'll have missed out some things and keep adding to it as we go. But what we're doing is redrawing this from the perspective of a family, of a resident. So in the centre, you've got that family, you've got the things we rely on every day in our lives. So it might be the community, friends and family that you draw on, voluntary community sector, digital health as well, I think it's part of that. So you've got things around you that help to make you really resilient in your life. Then in blue, we've got universal services, and in pink, we've got the acute and targeted services that dip into early health at times. So roughly 20 to 30,000 people across this system, children and adults. And so the challenge is, how do we get all this to coordinate and work well together? It won't be because I come up with a target operating model and tell everyone what to do, because they look like that. It'll be because we work really closely with them. We kind of enable the change to happen. You kind of get in touch with why people got into this job in the first place and help them to understand that if they do something a bit different, it will lead to better lives for children and families and things. So it's kind of, we're trying to apply systems approaches to manage this whole thing. I've got a new slide. So talking about systems. So I will talk about systems quite a bit through this. There's a really good reason for this. There was a thought experiment that Dr. Ackroft talked about a long time ago about creating a car. So if you wanted to create the best car in the world, you took the best gearbox or the best engine or the best disc brakes or something like that and put it all together. Then probably get something, but it probably doesn't even look like a car. It certainly won't work. And it won't be the best car in the world. And I think for too long as the public sector, we've focused on the efficiency of every individual service to the minutiae about how each one works, each pathway, all KPIs, the performance management staff. It's all about that little service. And we don't focus on the efficiency of the system. Whereas Deming would suggest that 94% of the efficiency that we see is related to the system more than the services. So I kind of don't quite go quite that far. It's certainly really important in system design. So I think what we're trying to do now is turn a corner on that and say, actually, this is about system design, and we think we'll get efficiencies from having an efficient system of public sector services and communities and how we all operate together and achieve the outcomes, rather than focusing on every service individually without putting that together. So that's why that one's there. You can tell me whether that resonates or not, because I test these things out. If they don't, then it'll go. Integration, lots of things we're integrating. It's obvious, it's children's and adults, it's health and care, people in place as well. So that link with local community networks and how we operate together, how we think about that engagement through local community networks, through the governance as well, and the delivery through neighbourhoods feels probably how it's going to work through. This is a rehash of the messages, so help more residents help them earlier, support schools and primary care networks, GPs, to be at the centre of their community and draw on those community resources. Enabling residents and families to be resilient and connected to their community, really big one, an obvious one from adult services. Integrating services closer to home. So if you ask residents, do you want your services in the centre, really good, or slightly less good, but closer to home, they'll generally say slightly less good and closer to home. That's what they're looking for. So there's a kind of shift there that we can put in place, not to make them less good, we think we can make them better, but also closer to home as well. And then improving lives, reducing inequalities, and reducing the demand for expensive care as well. There are 12 neighbourhoods that we're working with. There are also 12 in adults, with mostly completely aligned. There are 13 primary care networks, again with the same boundaries. So what we're trying to do is construct a neighbourhood delivery model that draws on the health system, and we work really close with the health system. So there's 1.1 billion pounds a year being spent in health. How do we get that 1.1 billion pounds and £500 million in children's and adult services coming together and operating really efficiently? That's the focus for delivery. And that's why we set it up, but obviously working really closely with local community networks and school clusters as well. Here are the champions. You've got a spot, Ingrid.
Yeah, she's on there.
Good. I think you possibly know quite a lot of the people on that board. We are very lucky to have 12 amazing champions set up around the county, all local leaders. And as I said before, their role is to help change the public sector. So we're looking to the voluntary community-based and social enterprise sectors to understand the best ways of changing the way we operate, linking better into communities, drawing on those resources, that type of stuff. And they've been doing a great job. So we became full strength in September, and just working through from there now. Again, you see this, so loads of amazing stuff we've got in Somerset to draw on. Yeah, it's not just about the public sector. We've got hubs, we've got schools, we've got the primary care networks, nearly 3,000 charities, 10,000 volunteers. That's not including unconstituted groups. It's not including volunteers in faith groups either. Parent family support advisors, really critical. Lots of staff working within health coaches, health connections, link workers, social prescribing, that type of thing. And community agents, village agents as well. We think there's a way of bringing them together into that neighbourhood delivery and putting that together into a combined workforce locally, possibly across health and care. That's really where I want to get to. Things we're adding, so we've got 12 hubs. So those 12 hubs are really, they're kind of there to help say, look, actually, we've got 12 areas we're working in and to be recognisable, and we're delivering things through them, and that's great. However, I'm much more interested in the 100 hubs that we've got across the county. Can we have local delivery through 100 different places across the county to make that really close to home, to make sure that villages that wouldn't necessarily receive or even see public sector services normally are actually starting to see something. So you'll see in the same strategy, we didn't talk about it today, I think, but we're saying that we want to use those 100 hubs to help with drop-ins and to deliver things which are local to help give early help and then reduce the demand coming in later. Building around schools as anchors, so we think schools and GPs can be anchors in their community. They've got a lot on at the moment, so the first thing we're doing is showing, look, actually, there's loads in the community that can help you. And that's part of the team around the school model, but also the engagement work that champions are doing. We think by showing them this is what's in the community, please draw on this, help support your families, your pupils, that they will then get into a reciprocal relationship around that. And obviously we'll use brilliant examples from Holyrood and other places as well. Lots of coordination going on, lots of increasing that early help that I talked about, and then reducing barriers. So we've put in loads of barriers. We put in geographic barriers, so people work in different geographies and don't talk to each other very well because they're working in different cohorts. We put in barriers so that you've got that IT system, that case management system, you can't talk to each other and that type of stuff. So we want to try and cut through all that if we can. We'd like a common case management system. We're just scoping that out at the moment, which would be accessible to schools, voluntary sector, as well as social care and others. We think that would be quite a game changer in how we operate together, also quality assurance. We've got the Transform app that I think colleagues might have seen. We're going with great guns to kind of get a new version in for schools to help them to be engaging and understanding the needs of their pupils and who's working with them. But we've got GPs signing up now, which is amazing. We've got probation going for it as well, and others. So this is really starting to pull together, and we've been asked with, I think, supporting about 30 or 40 other local authorities around this area because of the way we're doing really well around that data sharing. And with the Transform app as well. We're also putting together a database of local resources. We have about 40 or 50 databases of local resources. So you might ask why we need one more. But what we want to do is go into the back end of all of those and pull the data out into one database and then have that kind of transaction so we can change stuff automatically as well. And that will allow us to start suggesting things, allow us to have a directory for staff and residents about what's available in the community that can help. Not everyone knows that there are things around the corner that are there that can support them. So that'll increase the amount of help. Lots of integration as well, that type of stuff too. Team around school very briefly. So this is a kind of really fundamental kind of model. The way we see in other local areas do this, we see quite a reduction in social care, just as an example of change in demand. And that's because what you're doing is you're supporting, you're coaching, you're helping people within universal services to be able to deal with the needs that they're seeing. And for those in universal services, it feels like they've got more of the tools, they've got more of the support available to help as well. So this is a win-win situation if we can get it to work. We're really focused on relational practice. So how do we get people to get to know each other well locally and be able to draw on each other and support each other? We've been very reliant on process in the past and meetings and things like that. We think that gets in the way of an efficient local delivery model. So we want people to know each other, be able to pick up the phone, have a call, talk, look at the same data, that type of stuff in order to progress. So you'll see at the top, so we've got connecting into local champions and local resources, named professionals, that's from the Transform database, relational practice being sort of promoted, the data sharing and contacts, and then what we get is that wraparound help for families, drawing in support as it's needed, and being more efficient and more responsive as well, reducing the number of exclusions. We hope that's really the aim around this, and supporting children who might come into care in the future. This is one of the things I really wanted to talk about as well. So help for all. So we've got loads of stuff that's available that can help people around early help. So this is a short list of some of the top things that are available that can help people locally. We're adding in a few around adult services as well into this. And we've got a website and we've got a kind of page around help for all. We've got the kind of leaflets and all this type of stuff. But kind of forget all that. The really important thing is that every one of those 20 to 30,000 people in our workforce, combined workforce across the system and community groups, has the ability to kind of sit down with the resident and say, look, actually, based on your needs, that this would be really helpful. Look on this page, this is the website, or this is the coop, you can log in here, I'll help you to log in. You're hand-holding and helping people to access that early help. It's all very well we have this stuff available. We need to get everyone accessing it and increase the demand that's coming into early help in order to reduce the demand that's coming into our acute services. So loads of stuff written up about this and things, but the important thing will be engaging with the workforce, helping them to understand what's available, what they can draw on, and pulling that in. This is just a summary slide. I think I've talked about almost everything. So different types of practice in the middle, relational practice, trauma-informed. It's kind of the way we want people to operate in the future, a bit like Wigan did with their sheep dip thing. Investments in communities, we've got a small amount, 200,000, well, 180,000 pounds or so that we can invest through Sunset Community Foundation. It's just a small amount we had that away a long time ago and is able to be used to support local community groups. But ideally, we'll be seeing more, and I think social prescribing is a really important investment vehicle into the community to help to reduce GP and A&E admissions. So that's where we need the money to be going in the future. Identifying who needs help, another critical one. If we start to get the resources that are local, the community resources and other resources that can support, and we've got some needs assessment, and we're starting to understand needs better, then we can be proactive. We can have a digital relationship and ping out a message that says, oh, did you know there's something local that can help you? Or did you know about this resource online? Or we can have something flash up for social workers that says, you're talking to this family, by the way, there are these 3 things locally that can help. So we're starting to be proactive in how we're offering support to residents and helping them to access more. But it's an offer. It's something just to help them if they want to help to increase that amount of early help that people are accessing. On the bottom, you see the main thing was GPs, hubs, and schools, as well as our kind of core delivery vehicles. And on the left, professionals and community feel like we're in the same team. The Connect Sunset team, we're together. There's a psychological experiment which would mean that if you feel like you're in the same team, you're less likely to refer to each other, you're more likely to collaborate. And that's really what we want, is that kind of collaboration and engagement with each other locally. I said I'd talk a bit about the future as well. So there are 9 work streams that are set out here, obvious things, I think. And then in terms of the timeline, this isn't quite accurate, but we're playing around with it at the moment, but we wanted to kind of set something out for a little while to 2030. So things coming up, there's a strategic partnership that we're putting in place with the voluntary community sector. We've got the MOU at the moment, but in order to manage the village and community agents, we think more services in the future, we want to set up a kind of alliance style arrangement with Spark in order to get that to really kind of function as a kind of management of the early health system in the future. So we'd like to expand it, so that's coming quite soon. Obviously, the 100 hubs, we're just mapping where those are and which ones we want to be engaging with and linking to. We've got a refresh of the Children and Young People's Plan coming along. I see the blueprint, the technical half of the Children and Young People's Plan for the future, and the other, or an early health strategy, then the Children and Young People's Plan being the other half of the early health strategy, being more user-focused, talking about children and young people's needs as well. Help yourself, lots of sort of things to support that are there, and the resources we talked about. What else? Establishing neighbourhood teams. We're looking at, can we reconfigure some of our services to local, starting to engage with primary care networks to say, actually, can we start to work together? We're just building relationships, but that's going to come soon. And then over to the right, you can see things like automated early help, taking a little while to put in place, digital relationship with citizens, some of the social prescribing work, capacity building to reorientate the public sector. So we are designing everything from a community perspective in the future, those types of things. So I'll probably leave it there. So thank you for your time. And hopefully that's a kind of interesting stop tour. I think the thing to take away from this is lots of stuff going on which will help children and families, and we hope kind of put the foundations in place so we can reduce demand coming in. But also those foundations have the ability to be built on, particularly by health, particularly by the rest of the council, as a delivery vehicle for the smaller public sector in the future that's still able to meet the needs of residents, be more local, more connected, and really draw on what's available in communities that can help citizens. So that's kind of the plan, is that we're putting a staging post in, which then allows us to move to a new public sector model that is able to deal with the national challenges that we face.
Richard, thank you for that summary you had to rush through. The government wants to meet first of all, and I think I've learned a lot from that. One of the things, how can we, or how are you planning to get the rest of the councillors, our other colleagues, to be aware of what's going on and understand it a little bit better?
Yeah, sure. So part of the comms, you might have seen a few blogs and things and getting different information out there at the moment. The comms will ramp up over time, so we'll have those examples and things like that. Obviously, members are receiving that. We've got a few things we're going to send out to members as well that help for all, the link to champions as well, just to make sure that's there. I think every member is encouraged to meet your champions. We appreciate that you are all embedded in your communities. You've got that local knowledge and those connections that are really valuable. So that link into champions, I think, is important.
I think, personally speaking, with our LCN, my own local one, I made sure that the Connect champion for that area was there, and to introduce themselves. And I think at the next LCN that's going to be made. And I would suggest that if you hadn't already for other LCNs, it would be really useful if the champions were able to introduce themselves there and have a point of contact. And also, it may be too soon for this, but obviously we've got a full council on the 20th next week. Next week, yeah, I think it's next week. That you may want to maybe think about having a stand there for a way to do it if you don't want to, or even at the next full council. Purely because the way that we are as a council, 110 members, it's very rare that they all come together at any one time. The full council, the only time I'm there, and it would be really beneficial. I would suggest that maybe not this is too close if you haven't already thought of it. Maybe something you want to do at the next full council.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
And really,
So picking up on what I was talking about earlier on when we were talking to charge, there is a lot of nervousness in some of the schools at the moment around actually, is this going to be additional work for them in reality, because a lot of them are on their knees. So how are we going to make sure that this is a positive experience and that we can get them on board? That's one of my questions. My other question is, there's a couple of things I am nervous about, if I'm honest. The website side of things, you talked around having the 55 plus websites currently, I think it is in Somerset, and harvested information. How are you going to do that and still keep all the statutory duties? That just makes me a little bit nervous. And then my last one is help to help yourself. Has anybody had a conversation with you around that name and some of the concerns that have come up? No, okay. So it has been raised by several members of this committee that if you Google that name, you will be taken to some very inappropriate websites. And as Somerset already has a large number of students that are self-harming, it's not the direction that we want to turn to. So we may need to have a bit of think about that one.
Thank you, that's very helpful, Ruth. Yes, so I think that one first, yes, thank you, that's useful. I think, yeah, we'll make sure that it's a different name then. It's something that's quite historic. I think 3-4 years ago, we went on a program called Help to Help Yourself, which is now health services, and we've kind of picked up and used that as a vehicle, but yes. In terms of the databases, that's part of the Help to Help Yourself work. Effectively, we think there are 50 different databases. What we'll try and do is we're not going to try and change how they're all updated, because that's crazy and that'll be taking over from people who are doing it locally. But we do want to kind of connect in and pull out the data and then be able to put some data back in and update things back in as well. So that's the idea. So what you end up with is a resource that can be, certainly sat alongside the local offer as a part of the directory online council, that then starts to list out all these things locally that can help. And once we've got that information, and it's in now Microsoft BI systems, then you can start to match it with needs and things like that. So you can do some really powerful things with those resources in the future. We just need to go through that business of kind of putting together. We've got a pilot in room that we're working on at the moment. And then schools being nervous. So I think it's fairly common for team run school model to be there across the country now. So I think schools are aware of that. I think the first thing I'd say is, if we know that relationships are quite important between the council and schools for historic reasons. The Education for Life strategy is about trying to address that, and the first year is really about focusing on those relationships. That's what we're doing with the champions. We're doing some stuff at the top, but also champions are coming in and having that engagement on the ground, which we think makes a big difference, as well as relationship managers and the inclusion managers as well that are doing that, and others, lots of us. So the focus is on relationship building to begin with. And what we want to do is be able to offer to schools and say, look, there are things to help. So there is a transform database that really, really helps people working in schools to understand the needs that are there, and also very quickly get help and connecting with others. We think the team run school model is, we hope, very helpful for people. Here's a group of people who are there to help you to support the needs of your parents, your residents, and your pupils, and that support can be drawn in really quickly. We need to work on it. It's relationship based, and relationships take time, but that's why we've got that as a starting point. And we've got lots of support locally in communities as well. And what Champions are doing is helping to show that local community support can help as well. And we think together those things should feel quite positive to schools, that there is something that's being wrapped around them now. And it will take time for the relationship to develop. But the idea is that here's the support, and over time we kind of move to a more closer way of working together.
Thank you. Martin.
Just aware of, yet another way of carving out the county. We've got your divisions, we've got the LCN division. Is there any way we could sort of make some of these concerns so that we actually just don't need to be talking about different divisions? We just talk about a set number of divisions, for example, the LCNs, and that we allow what you're doing, connect some side to specifically, let's say, to the LCNs.
Yeah, I'll avoid opening any cans of learning right now. But what I will say is, we think there was a really good way of those working together. So there are two geographies. So you've got the one that's set up by the NHS. It's a little bit arbitrary, but it is the way that funding is directed to the NHS. Around primary care networks, there are 13 of those. Those 13 are absolutely coterminous with the 12 neighbourhoods we've got. We just put Taunton together because we think it's better managed as one for the sake of our programme. and the 12 that are in adult services. And adult services have been operating for a while. So that's all kind of standard, that's been there for a while. Local community networks is based on local needs, on local democracy and engagement. So we think by working through the LCNs around engagement with residents, that's a really good way of doing it. And every champion goes to all their primary their LCNs. So that's been an important thing we put in place right from the start to make sure they're supported and there's that engagement there. Also, we can get some children issues on the agenda, which is good. And then we think there's some governance as well that will come in via the LCN, which we hope to. So we think these things work well together, and that's how we're trying to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Richard, thank you for that. It's really interesting. Thank you for taking the time for the information that was pleased, obviously, and the opportunity you get to raise the fact that the work that the champions are doing, and to make sure that we, Francis, you're looking really concerned. You use your hand
Are
up.
you winding up?
I was.
Because I haven't got my hand up, you had nodded.
I haven't, so I apologise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of things. Absolutely, I just get, sorry, I absolutely get the point. And I'm particularly interested to hear the child experience, albeit with needing to spread wider. Two questions from me. One is, where are village agents in all this? And certainly in some areas they were working, particularly with schools, but I don't think that's so everywhere. So where are they in all this? And the other one is, if a school is aware of a family that is struggling, and the champion is not part of the school, it's been employed by somebody else, is the thing that they should do go to that person? And right, well then I need to talk separately.
Well,
perhaps to
I'll
allow
answer
that.
the question. So taking the second one first, so if the school's aware of a family that's struggling, they have a team around the school that's named. So they've got named individuals, which includes family intervention service managers, it includes the mental health support if that's there in the school, inclusion managers, the champions there as well, school nurse we're bringing on quite soon, and police and others. So and what we want to do is add some voluntary community secretary into that team around the school as well. So they're the people to go to first of all. The champion can help, but they're more in a coordinating role rather than an individual child role, if that makes sense. So there'll be cases that's important for them to know about, but then they want to draw the strategic implications from that and apply it across the system, if you see what I mean. So that family intervention service manager might be a good person to talk to, but they should go to the team around the school and consult with who's there and who can support directly. Awesome.
If I very quickly, that's really helpful, because other people have said to me, oh no, your champion is, find your champion, go to the champion, because the champion will know what voluntary sector stuff is happening in the area.
And they'll know that, yes.
So that would be a thing that they should do.
Certainly talk to the champion, that's fine.
Yeah, but otherwise, if you want more, then you go to the team around whatever.
Should we try and
it is. Yeah.
stay on with the conversation?
Sorry, sir.
Right, I'll take your first question as well then. About village and community agents. So we've just re-tendered for village and community agents. We're working really closely with the team around that, and that's why that strategic partnership we talked about with the voluntary sector and the kind of alliance managing the whole system will start off first with village and community agents within that pot and work through that. We think village and community, we've asked the village and community agents to move to a neighbourhood model. So that would be an adults and children's neighbourhood model, and over time we'll link with the primary care networks. I'm seeing the champions being in a leadership role within the neighbourhood teams. We haven't set out how that will work, but that's the idea. So they'll all be knowing each other well, work operating locally, parent family support advisors in there as well, we hope. And over time gives more staff from the council and hopefully primary care networks coming in as well.
Thank you.
Richard, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll leave that now. I look forward to working with hearing from you in the future, Richard. Thank you. Okay, just very quickly, I'm conscious that I'm massively over time. Item 9 of our agenda was in reference to the Children's Services Transformation Priorities Plan. Obviously, I gave you a hint at the last meeting that I'd be looking for volunteers. I'm not asking for anyone to be an expert on the topics. It's more a matter of understanding and being able to be in a position to. So far, you'll be pleased now, I've had 2 volunteers. Both of them are co-op members.
Sadly, that doesn't mean sadly, that means that we have any councillors, members volunteer. The 4 areas specifically: education for life, children looked after, transformation, special education and needs disability strategy, and Connect Somerset. Has anyone been able to have any thoughts in relation to whether they have an interest? Bruce?
I'm happy to do either, but I'd rather avoid education for life or STEM strategy just because that's the day job in life as possible. So potentially Connect Somerset if that's.
I would say I'm not going to tie everyone down. It's just there are opportunities between meetings for people to have other meetings so that they can have an informal conversation to learn a little bit as well. Maybe Evie.
I'm quite happy to go on.
Okay, thank you. I just got you on to CIA transformation. How about that? Very good, Martin, and then Francis.
Have to go on transformation, CLA transformation.
Okay, thank you. Francis?
No, I'm happy to go on whichever one is most useful.
Okay, thank you. Would you be interested in doing a send line for me?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm happy to go on Connect.
Well, that's one of the most popular ones.
Something else.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Simon. Okay, members, thank you. That's I've got that. What I'll do, I'll draw the list up every few and I've got it written down. But anyway, so members, thank you very much for your time. Next item of the agenda is items for information. They can be circulated. Any thoughts or comments? No, there being no further business meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.